So wait, it was a magazine. When you
Magazine, yeah. That's how I started, yeah.
You said
Magazines was like the original platform for... Wait, have we started?
Silicon Alley.
I guess we've started.
This is the trick. We've just been recording
the whole time.
Yeah, but
Welcome to Acquired Sessions.
All that stuff that you said beforehand that
Yes.
like was really juicy. I don't think we should put that in.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. We don't want to tell people where the bodies are buried. Well, cheers, boys.
Cheers.
Here we go. Is this the first one or?
This is the first in real life.
Wow,
But I think this
IRL.
is our 9th, 10th together, something like that.
A lot between the two pods, yeah, for sure. Great to know you, boys.
So this is the first Acquired Sessions.
Acquired Sessions. I feel like I should get out a guitar here and just play some Dylan.
This is your baby. What is Acquired Sessions?
Acquired Sessions is normally on the show, we are like so scripted.
Yeah, you are.
And we have a great time. We do 4-hour episodes. It's awesome. But we're like, for folks like you who we know really well, what happens if we throw out the script?
And just chop it up.
And we just chop it up.
David Rosenthal Unplugged.
Wow, I love it. I love it. This is literally MTV Unplugged.
Literally.
That's great.
So, well, we thought we have no agenda, obviously, but
Wait,
Where do you want to start?
we got to thank Vanta.
oh, yes.
Oh, Vanta. I'm an investor.
We're investors too.
Well, great. They're an awesome company. Big supporter of podcasts. So, yeah, go Vanta.
We are huge fans of Vanta and their approach to the whole compliance process, SOC 2, HIPAA, GDPR, and more. And we've got CEO and co-founder Christina Casiopo back with us today.
Vanta was already the best place to check the box and get security compliance certified. But now you've just launched Vanta Trust Reports, which take things even further. Tell us about that and how they can help companies deepen their relationships and trust with their customers and partners over time.
Really excited about these. So actually a bit of not yet told Vanta history, but something like Vanta Trust Reports, honestly, a much worse, much more poorly designed version by yours truly, which is why I can say that, were launched in the very early days of Vanta when we wanted to help companies get secure and prove that security, but weren't yet convinced we wanted to or had to go all through the nuances of what a SOC 2 was. So we figured, hey, let's just make this report of the best security practices. Let's check companies against those practices all the time and make this live and updating, visible and transparent. This should help these companies prove their security and grow their business. And it should also help them be more secure because they've got this report, like this kind of security status page out in the wild. So 2017, Vanta tried this and found out that no one really knew what a Vanta report was, and everyone wanted a SOC 2. So flash forward to 2022, and it's actually really exciting.
Turns out creating standards is, people have to know who you are before you can create your own standard.
A little bit, and so honestly, I'm joking, but I'm not. Literally the company strategy on that day sort of became, okay, use the existing standards to bolster yourself and build something better here. And so this launch of Trust Reports is really exciting. These are companies that maybe it's before they've gotten a compliance certification, maybe in their process of getting one. For some, actually, they already have one, but then rather than keep going through their buyer's process, they're like, look, this is just constantly up to date and has all the information you need. Take a look at this instead, rather than my, compliance PDF from months ago. So relative to a SOC 2, which is done once a year and kept up to date annually, a Vanta Trust Report is kept up to date to the minute, basically, continuously. You always know what the company's practices are. So just really excited to get this out into the world and into folks' hands.
Our thanks to Vanta, the leader in automated security and compliance software. If you are looking to join Vanta's 2,000, nay, 3,000 customers to get compliance certified in weeks instead of months, you can click the link in the show notes or go to vanta.com/acquired for a 10% discount.
Thank you, Vanta. So in the juicy stuff earlier, you mentioned Mahalo.
Yeah.
I don't. Is that why you started?
Can we just
the
keep referring to the juicy stuff as
the juicy
anything
stuff.
that
Yeah, no, we want to talk about
say,
that stuff.
Yeah. Is Mahalo why you started? You went from print to.
Well, in the 90s, I grew up in Brooklyn. My dad had his bar seized by the feds because he didn't pay his taxes during the 1987 crash. He got behind, and the Fed showed up one day, and this was maybe 6 weeks before I was set to go to college. And he said, "Hey, son, I can't help you with college. Good luck. And I might be going to jail, so take care of your mom. So he was like really behind on his taxes. And, state liquor authority, they kind of take it serious. So feds come, shotguns, the whole thing. They seize the place. They seize everything in it. And I was like, well, I guess I'm going to school at night and I'm going to work during the day. And I worked fixing laser printers. And that was like a really good racket. The HP had just come out. And
were you set to go to college somewhere else?
Well, that's another story. But I was set to go to Brooklyn College. I got into that. I had also taken the police exam to be a police officer. So my brother went into the force. And then I said, you know what? I'm going to see if I can go to college and make that work. So I'm going to go to Brooklyn College. So I decided to work during the day, and then I went to school 4 nights a week, 6 to 9 p.m., carried full credits, 16 credits a semester. And I would work fixing laser printers all day. I was a bad student. I was always that student who underperformed. I didn't find great meaning in academics, but I had a computer when I was in high school, and I was more interested in playing with my 300 baud modem, which then became a 1200 baud modem in my PC Junior. So it kind of, like many people of that era, we were sort of set on a path because we were the first generation to have a computer at home. I actually had an Atari 2600, and it could play Tank, was the game that came with it, and Pong. And so my dad bought this for us when I was 6 or 7 years old, 1976, 1977, and he had one of the first Pongs in Brooklyn in his bar.
Oh, so he must have cleaned up on that.
Oh my God, it was crazy. And so I just got exposure to video games and computers, and I was like, wow, this is incredible. Like, computers are going to change everything. And then I happened to hack some software. I ran a lot of scams, but...
you told us about the VHS.
So VHS, Jason's Hot Tapes, was technically my first business, but there was a side job I had, which was cracking software. So we would make copies of like Chess Master and stuff like that, and then sell them for $10. And then we started like hacking and doing what was called phone phreaking.
When you were doing this stuff, like, you had to be reasonably technical to do it. Not like not like Wozniak technical, but like
we soldered chips sometimes. We changed.
Yeah,
to put memory in at that time, you had to like take the memory chips and put them in, and then bend them over and stick them in.
Did you ever think about did you consciously ever make a fork where you were like, not tech media, and of course media about tech, but you're like, I'm not gonna be the guy doing the boards. I'm gonna be the guy writing about the people doing the boards.
It's a very good question. I used to go to Bleecker Street. I used to hang out in the West Village or the East Village. It was like the cool places to hang out. And like a thing to do would be to go to Tower Records and look at the zine section. So there was a concept of a zine, which was short for magazine. But a zine was something you wrote with your friends. You printed it yourself at a photocopy store.
It's like blogs before blogs.
Blogs before blogs. And I created a zine. I was like, I'm going to be a magazine publisher. So the first one I did was Cyber Surfer, which was about dial-up services and CD-ROMs. And I did it with my friend Brian Alvey, whom you might have heard of in my career. We went to high school together.
Weblogs?
We did weblogs together. Yeah. So, but in the early 90s, I did
Which is
Cyber Surfer.
Engadget, Twad.
All of that stuff.
Everything you sold to AOL.
Thing I sold to AOL. But anyway, before that, I did that magazine, and then I met Jerry Colonna at Internet World, the first one, and there was a booth.
That's right. When Jerry was a VC, before he was like
before he was a VC, he was consulting for Lycos, and I think CMGI. And so there was a Lycos booth, and I had met this young lady at it, and we hit it off, and we were talking, and then she introduced me to Jerry Colonna. And then I met Jerry Colonna in an office no bigger than this room on Union Square, and he said, listen, I'm leaving Lycos, but I'm going to start this Acme Ventures with my friend Fred. I want you to come read business plans for us. And so I met Fred Wilson, and I would go up to them, and they were doing, JP Morgan was going to back them for their venture firm. This was 1994, 95.
This became Flatiron.
And it became Flatiron.
JP Morgan was the first big anchor of Flatiron?
They were half of it, and Masayoshi-san, SoftBank, was the other half.
No way!
So they wanted you to come be a VC associate.
Not a VC, just to read business plans. So the deal was they would take me for sushi and pay me $1,000.
Wait, what do VC associates do besides just read business plans?
Exactly. Well, anyway, it was the thing. And so I had the magazine started, Silicon Eye Reporter, and they were paying me. And so I read about this Beverly Hills internet company, which got rebranded as GeoCities. And I wrote a little coverage of it, and I said, you should invest. I'm 24 years old. I don't even know what VC is.
That's where Flatiron made all their money.
Yeah. They were going to invest anyway.
The Flatiron became USV, right?
Yeah.
Square Ventures.
Flatiron went with Jerry Colonna. Then when Jerry decided he wanted to move to Colorado and just chill.
Yeah.
He had made enough money, I think. And
Coach Founders.
Coach Founders, I think. And yeah, maybe he had like, I think he's been pretty public about it. Like, I don't want to say a nervous breakdown, but a kind of like maybe a fork in the road, like making a decision about what you want in your life kind of situation.
He wrote that great book about it.
Yeah. And so Jerry was a good mentor, but Fred actually became ultimately my deep mentor at that time. And Fred said to me, listen, you're doing Silicon Valley Reporter. You're writing about us and the companies we're investing in. And you're doing stuff. Which would you rather do? And I was like, I think I'll do the magazine.
This was before. Now it's like, I do both.
And now it's like I do both. Why choose?
But just to back up to GeoCities, that sold to Yahoo for like
$5 billion.
And
I think 4 or 5.
Flatiron was the main investor.
Yeah, Flatiron maybe owned 5 or 10% of it at the time. It was like a huge win for them. I mean, Fred was on fire for a New York VC and Jerry. They did pretty well. They had
How did that happen, right? Like, I mean, Silicon Valley was here, but they were in New York. Like, what was going on?
Yeah, there was a lot of good companies brewing in New York, and my concept with Silicon Valley Reporter was, well, they have red herring
in the Bay Area.
Upside in the Bay, but I owned New York, and I had Silicon Valley Reporter, and then I started one called Digital Coast Reporter in LA. So I had 2 magazines, 2 conferences, 2 email newsletters. I was kind of king of New York, right? I grew that business to $10 million in revenue off my credit cards. Had 75 to 100 people working for me when I was 27 years old, and I didn't know anything about how to run a magazine, how to run ad sales. I taught myself everything.
What did your family think of this? Like,
it was pretty heady stuff because I wound up being on the cover of the New York Times on Charlie Rose, and they wrote a feature story about me for 8,000 words in the New Yorker. So anyway, it's a really cool time in New York because at that time, you were either in media or finance or art, publishing. It was like a finite set, and I was in publishing, but I was also in this new thing, technology. And so everybody wanted in on that. It would be like the equivalent of crypto is today, like at its peak, where like, and you were the equivalent of like Satoshi or something. Like it was crazy to be the New York internet guy.
So we talked about a lot of this when we did our like big Empire of Jason Calacanis episode with you. So I want to like put this on pause. So, so people can go listen to that. You should. It's great. We get like the detailed story of like Weblogs Inc. and all that great stuff. And you mentioned, I want to like take us from you're only as good as the, your greatest, your newest thing.
Sure.
Because the last time we talked to you, you were just starting All In.
It's hilarious.
And like, can we talk podcasting?
Of course. I love it. Podcasting is like, I think perhaps my greatest medium.
What happened with All In?
It's weird.
Has it surpassed your wildest expectations?
I thought it would be something Chamath and I would do 10 times.
Yeah.
So the origin story is pretty simple. Chamath, I knew because he was running ICQ.
Chamath was running ICQ?
At AOL, and I had sold my company to AOL, and like the revolving door of AOL,
that was the lineage.
There was like Ted Leonsis had this march to $1 billion. My Greek brother, a mentor, had this like march to $1 billion offsite. And so I went to this, and I just sold Weblogs
like
Inc.
Like 1 million
to them,
AOL users?
Hot shit.
That's the
that was the idea. With Weblogs Inc. and with AOL and other assets they wanted to buy, they were going to march to 1 billion users.
Yeah.
It was like this crazy rallying cry, and we had these T-shirts, March to 1 billion. So I go to that, and I see Chamath, and I was like, hey, and he's like, hey, and we introduced each other, and we had known of each other, and I was like, what are you doing here? He's like, I'm running ICQ into the ground, I'm just riding it down every month. It loses 1 million members, whatever. I was like, it's hilarious. And he's like, yeah, but I'm leaving. I'm going to go to the West Coast. I'm going to go work at this VC or whatever. I was like, all right, nice seeing you. And so then when he was there, I was in LA. And
what VC did he go work? Because he was at Facebook.
Mayfield for a year. And then Sean Parker introduced him to Zuck. And Zuck needed, like a Chamath. He needed like somebody who would just
Chamath
be a
built
barbarian.
the growth team.
He built the growth team. And he's like, there is no equivalent of growth. That was the idea of growth hacking didn't exist as a term until Chamath did what he did. He said, just find me the smartest people. I'm hiring based on IQ, and I'm hiring based on desire to make a lot of money and be a beast. And he went into beast mode because he too was very hungry. And he was
you guys must have been like brothers from another mother.
Yeah, for sure. We're definitely both outsiders in Silicon Valley, and I had Chamath come on the pod. This Week in Startups, that is.
We listened to it. It's fun to go back to that moment.
The first one.
And you can see how he's not, polished. He's not Chamath, as gregarious or whatever. He's a little more reserved.
He doesn't have the Loro on.
No Loro piano.
Was he in great shape or?
No, not what I'm taking. He was like a dork, you know, like but he was.
This is Bezos pre.
No, yeah, it was like Bezos pre. Yeah, whatever. But, you know, he always was a poker player. He was playing in Atlantic City, so he was, you know, like myself, an outsider who wanted to take risk and wanted to win, and you know, confident. You know, even maybe more confident than both of us should be, but. And so I kind of introduced Chamath to the world by convincing him to come on the pod, which he was like reluctant to do when he was at Facebook, but he did it after Facebook. So I kept asking him to come. He finally was in LA. He came on the pod. And then I was like, he's really good on stage. Like he's funny, whatever. And so.
Which at this point you had an eye for. Because you were
sure,
like.
Of course. I mean, one of the things when I was a podcaster in those early days, you know, I'm talking about 12 years ago, whatever, is, you know, I introduced a lot of people to the
14,
world.
Right?
14,
like
yeah. I introduced people to the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was 2008, I guess, whatever. So I introduced a lot of people who were in tech to the, you know, and it was only a couple thousand people.
And then as now too, like, you could be a great founder, you could be a great, you know, person in tech, but like that doesn't automatically make you a compelling podcast.
As we know.
Yeah.
No, of course not. No, I mean, I have my own theories about what makes for a great guest. We'll put that on the side for now. But anyway, we started a friendship. We started playing cards together. We started hanging out. You know, trading notes kind of thing. And he's going to start his venture firm. I'm a scout at Sequoia, all that stuff. We started playing and trading notes, and we just become great friends. But then he was coming out of CNBC one day, and he's like, oh my God, you know, just like, we have such a good rapport when you interview me, because he had done a bunch of interviews with me on stage and stuff like that at my events. He's like, I want to do a podcast with you. I was like, yeah, you can come on this week at Startups anytime. It's twice a week now. And
which it's now 5 times a week?
6.
My
Sunday,
dude.
yeah.
Plus I'll see.
I may go back down to 5 next year. It's a little much right now.
Yeah, dude, I mean, we'll come back to this, but
We'll
like, you're killing yourself right now, and you're on Act 3.
Yeah. I have more energy now than... I may have... I just this, like, coming out of the pandemic, might have as much energy as I did when I was in my 20s. But for different reasons. Different type of energy. Anyway... Chamath calls me, you know, coming out of the studio. I don't know if he was in New York or he was in the one market one in San Francisco here. But he said, I want to do this pod with you. I said, okay. And he said, I want to do a new pod with you. Just me and you. We talk. I was like, sure. He's like, what should we call it? We're texting back and forth. I was like, we should call it All In.
And this is 2020?
Yeah, it's like 2 years ago or whatever. And I said, yeah, we should call it All In. Like, we should come up with a poker name. He's like, yeah, great, like a raise or something. I was like, All In.
Because you'd been referring to this poker game on air on Twitter.
Yeah, I would talk about it once in a while, the poker game that doesn't exist. And Sky Dayton and I had a poker game with Brooke Hammerling, the famous PR person, at the Code Conference, which was the All Things D conference before that for 20 years. Then Chamath had a poker game. Sachs, I had hosted it, floating, and putting all that together. Yeah, I'd refer to it many times on the pod, but try to, you know, keep it from becoming public.
Right.
But it was me, Bill Gurley. It's all public now.
Mark Pincus, right? Or maybe
Pincus used to come to the Code one.
Yeah.
Which is another funny story. And lots of funny stories in my life. But anyway, so then the pandemic happens, and we're like, well,
we're letting you go and just dropping these little breadcrumbs.
We got to pick them up on the way.
At some point, we got to pick these up.
Anyway, at some point, I'll write a biography. Anyway, 9 years, third book. Anyway, then the pandemic starts to happen. We're like, well, Sachs has some ideas about masks, and then Friedberg has
Sachs
some
and Friedberg
ideas.
weren't. There was no besties originally, right?
No,
it was just you and
I mean, in
Chamath.
truth, like Friedberg and I weren't besties before All In. I mean, we knew each other. We were friends, but not besties. I was besties with Sachs and Chamath, and now Friedberg is a bestie. But he played in the game, obviously, and we had just started to develop a friendship. But anyway, that foursome kind of clicked, right, pretty quickly. And I think, you know, I was a really good interviewer. I'd studied interview techniques, and really, you know, after doing I'd done at least 1,000 episodes of Twist at that point. And I had Sachs on many times, and Chamath. So I was very comfortable with them. And at the poker game, we break chops, and I make jokes. And Chamath's a great host, and we're just very comfortable with each other. And Friedberg kind of joined that group, and it clicked. And I think during the pandemic, and I thought maybe this last 10, 20 episodes, but during the pandemic, I think people wanted information, and I realized
and perspective. I mean,
sure.
I think that's a thing. I'll tell you, I never expected to be listening to David Sachs talk, coming from where he comes from politically and where I come from politically, and going, That is a good point. And that perspective is like so helpful in our polarized world today.
Yeah, it's very unique. And, around the poker table, we all listen to each other and we're friends. But the world does not want us to be friends in some ways. The world wants us to be enemies. And I kind of think about it like, best of enemies kind of situation. Like we debate specific things like Gore Vidal and... who was his adversary? Anyway, it's a great documentary about Gore Vidal and
Who's Gore Vidal?
William F. Buckley. They're just two public intellectuals. One was on the left, one was on the right. And there's this documentary, Best of Enemies. In the 60s, they started debating like different political conventions. And it was like the most compelling thing on TV.
But they were like friends.
Best of Enemies.
Interesting.
They weren't besties like Sax and I are, but, Gore Vidal was he was gay. Kind of closeted or quietly gay, and on the left, and Buckley was like a serious conservative, and they went to blows sometimes on the show. Like at one point, Buckley, I think he called him like a sissy or something like really like derogatory as a gay man, and the world didn't understand he was exactly gay. It was like sort of time period in the 60s where like maybe some adults understood like, yeah, that's a gay man, but we don't say that's a gay man.
When Ben got into town yesterday, we were driving the Castros right nearby, and we saw a naked guy in the Castro, and I was like, oh, naked guy in the Castro. And Ben was like, what is going on? Like, dude, you got to understand in the Castro.
Like huge, jacked dude walking around and super sunny, so he's like just all like slicked down, sweaty.
But did he have shoes on? Was he wearing combat boots? They usually wear boots.
Yeah.
And then they usually carry a sarong. There was a big debate when I first moved up here because there was a number of folks who used to like to get a Starbucks, and they had to like negotiate, and they were like, how about a sarong in Starbucks, because you're going to sit
right
bare ass.
And for context, I've explained this to Ben, but like this is a thing in the Castro in San Francisco. It's a cult. It's like now it's like you see it and it's like, this is like a relic of the 60s, 70s.
Yeah,
it actually was pretty awesome because we're like driving up and David goes, oh, a naked guy. It was the most like warm-hearted.
Yeah.
I had to adjust as well as a New Yorker because as a New Yorker, if somebody's naked, that's a sign that if there's about to be some crazy person in a fight and police and chaos. And here it means like high fives and right-ons. Mm-hmm. But growing up in New York, like if somebody takes their clothes off on a public transportation or in a cafe, like people are getting a baseball bat and calling the police and like the shit's about to go down.
Oh my God.
And then here it's like, high five and live your life. That's one of the things I love about San Francisco. But anyway, the pod's gotten very big.
So you get the gang together and like, why do you think it works? Like,
why do you think it works?
It's like the number one-ish tech
in our
business
it's number one, of course, but it was number 28 last week.
Like
in the world on iTunes.
You guys have transcended. Like this is more than just...
It has nothing to do with tech anymore.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with finance or tech anymore.
I think it works.
Tipped over into colleges. I was skiing in Tahoe, and I was with my kids, and it's hard to get a table type situation. Right. I was like, hey, I hate to be a pest, but I see you're wrapping up. And no pressure, but are you going to be leaving soon? Because I'd love to camp out here and get your table.
And they're like, stop busting my balls,
And the
Jason.
woman looked at me and she goes, JCal? And I was like, have we met? And she's like, no, I listen to your pod twice a week. I'm like, it's only on once. She's like, I listen to it twice. And I was like, oh my God, that's so nice. She's like, I was like, are you in the industry? She's like, I'm a dentist in Reno. And I'm like, you're a dentist in Reno. May I ask how you found out about it? She's like, I don't know. Like,
she's like, I deeply care about San Francisco politics.
No, somehow she had found it, and this is during the pandemic situation. And then that's when I realized it had crossed over.
Was there a moment for you, either you four or you, where you were like, whoa, this is...
I've been micro famous, micro celebrity multiple times in my career.
But this is different.
Not for me, and I got a lot of famous friends. I'm used to getting recognized. I'm used to people taking pictures. What I'll say is like where it used to be, if I go to Austin or New York, people would say, I would have 3 people stop me on the street a day if I was walking around in New York. Now it's 20, or 10, and they want to take a selfie, and it's, just, how podcasting is. You guys get recognized, and it creates a level of intimacy with people.
Oh, for sure.
If they're in the habit.
Yes.
Because you're hearing people every week, and then people become characters. And I tried to make everybody. I was, in all honesty,
on the show, or
in all honesty, I did craft with All In. I was very premeditated in creating some character. I've never really talked about this.
Yeah.
But I crafted some character kind of arcs. the fights are all real. Trust me, there's nothing scripted about that. But I did say, like, I think I can, as the point guard here, kind of shape the conversation. And I literally created the character of the Sultan of Science.
Right, as I was going to say.
And, Freeberg didn't even have a Twitter handle.
Well, there's
0 followers.
There's even a character of JCal on All In. Like there's
JCal, the world's greatest moderator. Sure, yeah.
I think more like JCal, the guy who lets himself be the punching bag because it plays for the show.
A little bit. I
Which
would
is
rather
part of the
not, if
world's
I'm being honest, I'd rather not be in the punching bag. Like, they're like, you're the poorest guy on the show. I'm like, do we need to point that out so often, guys?
You're like, not by much.
Rich. Like, I'm feeling really good about myself. You don't have to point out that you all have more money than me, and two of you have planes and I don't, and it's okay with me. I could have a plane, I guess. I could get one, but...
You care about the environment.
Well, no, it's also like I don't want to waste a ton of money and,
Right.
whatever reason.
But you do let yourself play that role of like you have been enormously successful, and you sort of let the role of JCal on the show be like that guy who one day wants to be like us. Maybe he'll make it.
I actually never wanted to play that, actually.
Okay.
No, that was just the boys breaking my chops, maybe. So maybe it's a little bit of like them wanting to, maybe take the piss out of me a little bit, which is fine because, I give it as good as I can get it. But I think that's probably for them, and you can ask them when they're on the pod, I think for them, that's kind of the diss, that's the one they can easily go to, is I'm the poorest guy on the show. But like, I've done okay. Like,
maybe let's flip it. Like for them, before All In, I mean, maybe Chamath had a little bit of a public presence.
No, they were not famous.
They had no go-to-market.
They're all, this is a new thing for each of them to hit this level of notoriety.
Right.
It's not for me.
What do you think we should ask them this, but
Sure.
like, if you were to speculate, caveat that it's speculation, what do you think for them All In has like done? Like,
Well, I mean, for Friedberg, nobody knew who he was except if you worked at Google or you were in VC. Like, he's very connected
Or
in
Monsanto.
those circles. What's that?
Or Monsanto.
Or Monsanto. Like, he's very connected in those circles, but he was kind of under the radar guy. I think really by design. He didn't have any desire to. So I think it's probably the biggest adjustment for him. The increase in profile has certainly been the highest for him. And he's loved. There was a moment when I like jokingly said to people during the Q&A session at All In Summit, just say who your favorite bestie is and then direct a question. And it was like 5 in a row, Sultan of Science. And it was like, oh my God, what have I done? Now I've created this monster. And he, at the time, like would barely show up for he would show up for 2 out of 3 episodes. He'd be busy. It wasn't a priority for him.
Right.
So I'd be like, all right, I'll put Brad Kirshner in. If you can't make it, I'll try to get Bill Gurley to show up or whoever, Draymond, to fill in for him. And it was always like, I wonder if Freeberg will show up. But he's actually really committed to the show now. For Sachs, he was high profile, but nobody really knew him as a Republican. So he kind of uncloaked as a Republican on the show.
Well, I feel like he was also almost even more so than any, well, not you, but he was high profile if you knew about the PayPal Mafia money. But he was like the least kind of public of the PayPal Mafia
of the
crew.
PayPal Mafia, you would say Elon, Reid Hoffman, Peter Thiel,
Keith.
Max Levchin, Jeremy Stoppelman, Chad Hurley, Ruloff.
Yeah.
And I guess Sachs would be somewhere in that strata of being known.
But
not
I feel
success,
like
being known.
Being known, yeah.
Being known. But yeah, and I think part of the reason this works is Sachs. I think Sachs has probably taken the brunt of the hit of the pod.
Yeah.
Because he is so passionate about, a lot of topics that maybe are unpopular in the tech circles. So I do think it's cost him deal flow on the margins, probably. I think there's probably...
I don't really marginal.
I wonder.
On balance,
he said that jokingly on the show. I don't know. I'm just thinking maybe there's somebody.
Kraft has ascended because he's done All In a way that.
Yeah, sure. I'm trying to think if is there a founder? I wonder. I don't know this, but is there a founder who's a young founder who would say, "I would never take money from Peter Thiel's venture firm"? Because I'm so liberal.
For sure there are. And,
okay,
and those people feel that way about Kraft now, but for every one of those, there's 10 more who know about
kind of
Kraft
agree with
now.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So anyway, I do think he's joked that it's cost him deal flow. I don't know if it has. I think surely the benefits
the pod too, I think for people in America and people in tech has moved, I think, a lot of people towards the center.
I think a lot of people were moving towards the center and we codified it for people.
Yeah.
We maybe made it okay to admit you're a moderate.
Yeah.
You know, I've been telling folks from the beginning, I'm an independent and a moderate. I voted probably Democratic 3 out of 5 times, 4 out of 5 times. But mostly that's a function of the fact that I've lived only in New York and California in my life, where you don't really get many Republicans or moderates. But I voted for Bloomberg, Giuliani, before he was crazy, and Pataki, who were all Republicans.
Insane to me.
Were you here during the
Schwarzenegger
era, or were you still in New York?
No, I wasn't, but I would have voted for him. I like competent people, and I supported Bloomberg for president, which got me a lot of flack.
Really?
I don't understand
remember
why.
that.
But
Like,
people were very
terrible.
upset that I was for him instead of whoever.
I think you guys talked about this on the pod, that like, what was the 2x2 quadrant of like, whatever it was, what we all think we are here in Silicon Valley, which is like social, liberal, fiscal, conservative. Yeah, we were like, everybody should be that, but we're the smallest of the 4 groups.
Yes, it is a small group. I think I believe in competence and staying out of people's lives. So it's very hard to know, because and then even David, this is, I think, when David and I fight on the pod, which some people love, and I think some people probably turn the pod off when that happens and they don't like it. And certainly the MAGA group has no love lost for JCal, I can tell you that. Like, my replies have been really crazy. We get like brigaded the last couple of weeks.
Oh my God.
It's nuts. It's funny, but it's also like on the margins, like they can get a little scary, like they'll dox me sometimes, and that's not fun. A handful of times it's happened. But I had to tell David, like, David, I am not like, I don't actually listen to MSNBC and Rachel Maddow to get my information. And by the way, you're pro-choice, pro-gay marriage, anti-war.
Yeah, he's the dove.
And I was like, well, okay, if we want to play this game, I'm going to W David the Dove. And now you're making me into Jason the Hawk? Like, what are we talking about here? Like, but anyway,
Well, it just goes to show how silly the coalition building is. Like,
it's totally silly, exactly.
The two-party system requires that if you feel very strongly about something, then you're not allowed to think independently about anything else.
It's so crazy, and I think what messes people up is the fact that I actually just think Donald Trump is a horrible human who you should do no business with, has no business being in any political office, and it is just horrible on any number of levels. But I believe that independent of his party, he's a Democrat, obviously.
Obviously, yeah.
Yeah, and so like I would hate him as a Democrat or a Republican. So it's not personal, and I would love.
Or it is personal with him, but it's not
very
with
personal with
the
him.
party.
Yeah, I just think this is a just horrible human being on in every way. Now I understand for some people, he represents change. For some people, it's like the way the Republicans secured office, and that's all they care about is winning. I get it, whatever.
And I think so much of the human condition is like being a part of a community. And he, for so many people, is a symbol that means, hey, all my friends and neighbors, we get to agree on something so that we all can find togetherness in something. And for some people, that's the flat earth. And for other people, that's startups. And for some people, it's
a tribe.
Yeah.
We don't, a lot of people don't practice religion anymore. And so he's their religion, and Hillary Clinton or Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders might be other religions.
Or the new iPhone. Like, I found myself ordering this phone and I love it, and it's the iPhone 14 Pro and it's magic and whatever. But like, it's not that different than my old phone, but I got to participate in all the fun watching of the keynote and the tweeting and the nerding out on like, let me look at the image quality versus the old one.
I gotta say, it really is pretty.
It is pretty, but like, I got to be part of a tribe. And like, that is a thing that no matter what your tribe is, that is so fun to be there on Tribe Day and Tribe Week.
I will say the thing I'm proud about the show, I think, is that it has, through a lot of the trials and tribulations, shown that you can be friends, disagree, learn from each other, and have a vibrant debate, which is how we all grew up, I think. When I say we, including you guys, but also specifically the besties, I want to be friends with people who I disagree with. I want to debate stuff, right? And then people are like this guy, Dean Preston, and he's like one of these supervisors here. He's a super idiot, like guy in San Francisco who like, won't let them build housing and all that stuff. And he's like, you're just a conservative, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, you don't actually understand who I am. He's like, you're a conservative billionaire. I'm like, wrong on both accounts, but thank you for the latter.
My besties remind me on the latter.
I'm working on it. I'm working on it. Not trying to be a billionaire. Thank you. And
on that, another thing that's really fascinating to me about All In and you guys is before All In, and maybe it's still to a large extent, I feel like Silicon Valley has this weird relationship with money, like super weird relationship with money. Like, remember there's a whole thing about like Zuck drove like an Acura SUV.
Oh my God, that all came from
like,
David Filo and Jerry Yang were driving their old cars to work.
Right, like the cool thing, like you could like make money, build a company, but like you never want to, like you never, and
be understated. Yeah,
you guys, I think, are the first like you guys are like,
whatever.
Fuck, like we got a private jet, like that's fine, like
I mean, listen, I believe in capitalism. I think it's great if people create jobs and if they get rewards for doing so. Like, fine. I literally the book I'm writing, my second book right now, I'm writing is about wealth and money, and like, but not like in my regard, but in a sort of like big picture societal regard. So I'm like literally been thinking about this topic a ton, and I think we worry a little bit too much about wealth creation with like a small like outlier wealth creation, and we don't think enough about inspiring people to create companies and learn. And like the time I create the most controversy is when I'm like, I believe anybody can do it, and people are like, you're so wrong, and I'm like, am I? Because I go on YouTube and you could type in any topic that you want to learn and you can learn it. And all the stuff that was at MIT where I never got to go, and Stanford and Brown, is online for free. And I listen to macroeconomic classes and AI classes when I'm like, it's 10 o'clock at night and I'm doing my email, I'll just put one of those playlists on from MIT OpenCourseWare. And I'm like, I can't believe I can take a course at MIT for free anytime I want.
And then you flip it, you can build a business there. Like David Senra over the Founders Podcast, like Mr. Beast, MKBHD, like nobody gave these guys permission.
Equitable.
Yeah.
But people want to spread a narrative that the world is unfair. And like I watched
I think
the world become so fair and so just, and so much information and opportunity become available that I'm like, wait a second. I could never figure out how a term sheet worked, and nobody would share their term sheet. And now there are 1,000 videos and blog posts on how to negotiate your term sheet.
The world is still unfair. I think the key insight is like recognize that the world is unfair, and actually what that is a game on the field, and figure out how to play the game on the field.
Sure, but I mean, it's never been more fair. So the world is unfair, true statement. And in America, it's never been more fair. You can learn, Google has like 5 courses online. I think it's called Grow with Google or something, where they're teaching how to be a UX designer, how to do this, how to do that, and it's free, so that they can get more people to apply for jobs. And the average job entry salary for these things is like $80K. So I find it's very weird in the world. I think there's like a group of people who want the world to be more unfair than it actually is, because it makes them feel more virtuous signaling goodness.
Well, that's their community. That's how they find that there are other people who love that they tweet that the world is unfair, so they...
And they have to, and it typically like is a certain type of person. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, I'm going to leave it at that.
But I teach Founder University now. I have a course where I teach people for 12 weeks, or I should say I have a team that teaches it. And I'm going to actually teach it myself this next cohort, where I just teach people how to start companies.
All right, let's plug it. How can they find out?
Founder.university, that's it.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, it's free. The way I did it was you apply. If you want to build a company, you pay $700. If you go and you get to week 12, we charge your Stripe back, the card back, the $700. If you don't come, or if you don't have an excused absence, if people miss something because of their kids or whatever, fine. But we just try to get people to complete it. Over 90% of people complete it.
That's cool.
So, and then we're investing $25K in some of those folks to help them start their companies. Like, people don't know all the work I'm doing, like, quietly, but like 200 people go to this course now. Or maybe I'll have 400 in the next the 4th cohort. We'll see. But like, people can learn how to create companies, and they're like, no, they can't. And I'm like, yes, they can. They're like, you have to have gone to Stanford. I'm like, no, I've invested in 350 companies. Like, maybe 5% of the founders went to Stanford. Like, no, that's just not, it's patently false. Yeah. Like, you have some confirmation bias. You're dealing with a data set from 10, 20 years ago. I get it. But I'm telling you, like, on the streets, ground level truth, we all meet with founders all day. It's never been more diverse. It's never been more open. Nobody cares where you went to school.
No one cares where you live anymore.
Nobody cares where you live. They care about what you've built and your traction. Like, it is post-pandemic, all people care about is like, show me your metrics, show me the product, show me your team. What are your skills? Great, let's go. What's your growth rate? It's basically become like as beautiful of a meritocracy as I've ever seen. And man, you say the M word, it freaks people the fuck out. I'm like, why is this so scary for you that Silicon Valley is a meritocracy? And they're like, because it's not. And I'm like, it kind of is.
Can I answer your question earlier of why I think all-in works?
Yes.
All right.
Go ahead.
So I think you've got the perfect storm of three things. The first thing is...
A lot of theories on this out there, by the way.
Billionaire porn.
Okay.
Most people, you're counterpositioned. Most people who attain that level of wealth crawl into a quiet hole and make sure no one knows about
You're
their
doing
private
shows
jets.
from boats and jets.
Yeah, so there's like...
I don't think we've done one from a jet, but yeah, there was definitely 2 boats in the last 2 years. That's
like,
true. Not my boat.
In some peak moments of All In, it's like watching Billions in real life. It's like you hear Chamath talk about this spread trade, and you're like, this guy's got a lot of money on that spread trade, and like, does he actually have a key insight here, or is he? And like, there's this interesting intrigue there. So bucket 1 is like billionaire porn. Bucket 2 is by the research you guys do and the folks that you each work with, because there's definitely researchers that seem to be involved. You bring things to the table that are like brand new insights that aren't widely available yet. So I feel like I was learning things about COVID-19 on All In that I wasn't getting through any other source. I'm like, somehow this is not making it to me, and this feels very, like a lot of it proved out to be like, this was good information before it was mass communicated.
All 4 of us are information junkies with a lot of research and teams that could inform
How
us.
many people, All In, how many people touch an episode of All In?
Ooh.
1. Producer Nick, that's it.
No, I mean, but like the research, the like the
I
best.
don't know. I'm pretty
There are
sure
text files open on people's computers when they're talking.
we have a docket with the notes, but that's mainly for me to queue it up. Like I just read the 4 or 5 bullet points so people know it. So I do that with my team, the docket. But the docket is built from, the 5 or 6 stories that people submit to our group chat and say, hey, put this on the docket.
Right.
And I think Sachs has some research help.
Yeah.
I'm sure Friedberg and Chamath read the stories, or they're well read. I mean, all of us read constantly, and we're in the information business of talking to people about the world. So you guys are investors. You know how it is. Like, you do 20 meetings a week with founders. They're going to tell you everything about the world.
Yeah.
And you guys are young still, but imagine you do that for 20 years. Like, you're going to get smart, or you're a journalist for 20 years. You can get pretty, I wouldn't necessarily say smart, but you'll be informed. So,
and if you're hearing the right pitches, you actually are getting like cutting edge information before it's widely available.
Definitely. So, okay, that's number 2. So yeah, we probably have a slight information edge.
Yeah.
Certainly a huge, I will say the information edge compared to journalists, having been, this is not a dig to my journalist friends. I was a journalist. I had 75 people at the magazine. We were always trying to figure out from the principals what was going on and tell that story. But we were only as good as our access to information. And we probably, now looking back on it, I think we had between 5 and 35% of a story. And I know that's like probably triggering to a lot of journalists that they have that little information.
You weren't on the inside.
But you weren't on the inside. So when you're on the inside, you have 100%, or even on the inside, you might only have 50%, depending.
You get enough to run with, and you feel like, okay, now there's enough story here, let's do it. And like, that's clearly not the whole story, but it's enough to put the piece together.
You're trying, and then over time, process journalism, as some people have dubbed it, maybe the 6 or 7 stories will tell the full story.
Yep.
Which is the third component do you think makes it successful?
It's the thing that David and I took forever to realize works about Acquired, which is relationship and charisma.
Yes.
Like, people like having fun by listening to stuff.
Sure.
And so, like, if we can make history fun, then
a little bit
people
of
are
joy
going to
goes a
listen
long
to
way.
4 hours
long
of
way.
us diving into stuff you would never read in a book. And you guys do that in spades. Like, it is just so fun to like temporarily join your world.
I mean, the fact that you as a podcaster who makes elite content, like top 1% content, find it compelling is just, that's very...
Listen every week. Don't miss it.
I can't
literally
believe it.
walking the baby up and down the hills, listening to
I mean, I have people tell me they listen to it twice, they take notes. I'm like, wow, that's great. I was
Don't
very...
take notes. Maybe I should take notes.
Well, anyway, I was very intentional with my role in it to step back, and be like the point guard. But I'm a shooting guard too, so sometimes I will want to shoot the ball, and I can do both. I'm a combo guard.
How did the Freeberg host episode come about? So
Well,
one week,
yeah.
you switched roles.
Well, he was like, I think this could be done better, this could be better, and that person was like, go ahead. And I just like, sure, I'll just shoot. And
You passed the rock, and
I was like, yeah, you want to go ahead, show us. And he did a solid job. But let's be honest, like
It's not a point guard.
it's not Showtime, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I don't think people are gonna go to watch him play point guard. I mean, he did a serviceable job, and
Put that on his tombstone.
no, I mean, but he shines when I created Science Quarter for him to shine. I said,
Right.
bring me a science. He's like, I don't know if I want to talk about politics. I was like, listen, Sachs wants to talk about current events politics. I'm giving him his red meat. Here's your quinoa. Come to me with a science story, and we'll do this quinoa corner kind of thing. And I made him the Sultan of Science. And
so good.
it was a distinct effort. I really wanted to make him shine, and it worked. It worked because you see how engaged he is. And what used to happen was, and fans know this, I'm not speaking out of school here, you see it every episode, Sachs would disengage during science and quinoa would disengage during politics.
Yeah.
And what I've been trying to do is keep both of them involved when the other is doing stuff, and Chamath and I are involved.
That's a hard job. That's a delicate.
I studied the McLaughlin group. People don't know this, but I went back to look at McLaughlin, and I watched him moderate. So there's a big debate. Do I interrupt too much or not enough? Do my interruptions, I call them interjections, do they help? And I actually looked at the interjections, and if you look at McLaughlin, you guys did not grow up on McLaughlin.
Super unfamiliar.
So
with
the
what
McLaughlin
this is.
group was like the best Sunday morning show. And it was so good, SNL would parody McLaughlin. It probably had 1 million people watching it, but this guy McLaughlin was pretty cantankerous. And if he didn't like what people would say, he'd be like, wrong. This is the answer. And it became so competitive that you wanted to watch it.
Yeah.
Now, what I didn't realize by adopting that would be that Sachs is the ultimate debater and will fight like a dog until he wins any debate. And so I may have pushed Sachs into more of a debate situation where I'm trying to not have it be a debate. I'm trying to have it be a conversation. So what I've been working on is trying to keep it be a conversation. And then some people in the audience are like, you have to be the fact checker for Sachs. And I'm like, no, that's not my role. I'm not real-time fact-checking Sachs. And so that is a delicate balance of and then sometimes I'll ask questions specifically because I know the audience doesn't know what, fair market value when they hear an acronym means. Right. So I'm like, explain that.
Right.
And I'll stop somebody. Now,
I mean, you're expanding the TAM to dentists. That's
correct. Thank you. So people are like, oh, JCal's an idiot. He doesn't know that term. Right. Or I say to somebody, can you unpack that? Can you explain that?
Obviously, you know that term.
For myself.
You were the third or fourth investor in Uber.
Yeah, exactly. Well played.
I think he's been in Robinhood too.
Too. Wow, who knows? And I'm like, dude, I'm asking that question on behalf of the audience. So when I'm moderating, as opposed to being an interviewer, or as opposed when I'm working with Molly and we're chopping up the news, when I'm the shooter there, right, and she's maybe playing point guard a little bit, and I'm shooting, and then sometimes I'll pass it to her and she shoots. I can travel between those roles. And, in that role, I'm acting on behalf of the audience, and I get the sense Chamath's going too fast. They don't know what the spread trade is. Let me pause. Can you explain one more time, or let me reflect back to you? Is this what a spread trade is? And he's like, almost this. And that's what I think has brought in, to your point, a lot of the dentist crowd.
And having an intimate sense of where your audience's edges are is a really important role there. When we have guests on, I'm always trying to catch...
Yes.
Where do they just go slightly too deep, and I need to pull them up so that we...
Yeah, and podcasting is about going deep. So it is really an art. Do you want to stop somebody when they're going down this crazy rabbit hole?
There's no clock in this room.
And they're going down some rabbit hole that has never existed in media before.
Right.
So...
And you want to let them go, but you need to make sure they're taking the stairs. Because, if they just jump in, you're like, oh, God, no one has any context. They can't learn anything new because you're not connecting it to something they understand.
Yeah. They just jumped into brain surgery. And you're like, let's just explain to us what's going on here. How are we going to chop up this brain?
Right.
Yeah, it's a bit of an art. But, I have to say, it's been a different muscle for me to flex. And it's been great fun for me.
The other thing, I don't know if you think about it on this axis at all, but, I kind of think of I used to think it was very binary. Like there's two categories of podcasts. There's candy and there's vegetables. And like I listen to the audio version of Stratechery and that's my vegetables. And it's not like deeply, it's enjoyable intellectually, but it's not like fun. And I certainly can't be doing anything else with the language center in my brain while I'm listening to that. I have to be like on a run and like sometimes even at home so I can take some notes or look something up. I can be cleaning,
it's a pause
but I
type
can't
podcast.
be.
You gotta pause it sometimes. Sometimes you hit and rewind.
Right.
Let me make sure I get what he's saying here.
Or I can listen to the talk show with John Gruber, and it's just like, if I missed out on 20 minutes because I was like brushing my teeth, and then I left the room, and I came back, and I'm like, oh, I didn't actually miss anything because this has just been
morning
like,
show.
It's comforting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like I love all the stuff he's talking about, but like it's not must listen every time, every minute, every second concept, and I'm not using hard parts of my brain to understand.
But All In has become candied vegetables.
It's both.
It's both, yeah, for sure. Yeah. I try to do with This Week in Startups and All In is try to have it be both. A little bit of personality, a little bit of entertainment, some fun hot takes. Yeah,
right.
I mean,
related but separate topic. Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
I feel like, especially there's a lot of, part of in the origins of All In, there's a lot of like bashing on San Francisco politics and California. Like there's a lot of crap wrong here.
Yeah.
But you guys are all still here. How are you guys feeling about that? Yeah, how do you feel about that? Like, what do you think of the Bay Area?
I lived in New York, Brooklyn, then Manhattan, and then I lived in LA, and then I lived here, and so I think I'm moving to places I enjoy less and less each time. I enjoyed Brooklyn and Manhattan much more than LA. I enjoyed LA much more than San Francisco. So I don't know where to go next, but I'm going to go somewhere.
Wait, so why are you still here then?
Well, I can't.
There's no reason for you to be.
I came up here because I had a lot of friends up here, and I had done LA, and I was like, I wonder how far. I'd been a Sequoia Scout, and then I was like, my friends are telling me I could start a venture fund. You kind of need to be up there. I wonder how I would do if I was up there in the industry. And I was kind of this.
Because if you wouldn't, you'd always wonder.
Well, Michael Moritz used to call me the mouth from the South. Because they had like 2 investments in LA. Oh, the mouth from the South is here. What have you gotten yourself into, JCal?
Sir Michael saying that.
But I moved up here, and yes, I love it up here. It's quite bucolic. My kids are loving it. It's quite nice. I would love to live in another city in my life or two. I could see myself in Austin or Miami. I like both of those cities. I think Austin's kind of the future. I think California is going to be damaged for a decade or two. So I think for the rest of our adult lives,
because of the pandemic, or
I think the politics and not appreciating the politics, the regulation, and not appreciating the tech industry is really the problem. And then you look at this guy, Dean Preston, like he is dunking on the founder of Away and Stuart Butterfield from Slack. They're a couple.
Yep.
And he's like, we got $1.2 million out of them when they sold their homes. And I'm like, and you also lost 2 incredible founders who've created tens of billions of dollars of wealth for San Francisco. You idiot. And like at the same time, Francis Suarez in Miami is listing all of the venture capital and doing a tweet storm about all the companies that raise venture capital. So you have one guy, Dean Preston, dunking on people saying, we have this 1%. So when they sold their $30 million house, we were able to extract $1.2 million. That's why tech doesn't like me. And I was like, hey, dummy.
Yeah, now all the future earnings are gone.
Like,
now, California marginal tax rate is 13.3%.
I mean, but they have an exit tax now for homes in San Francisco.
Right.
So if your home costs over $10 million, when you sell it, I mean, I think it's just a sales tax.
1.2 million from them selling their home versus 13% of their future earnings stream.
Literally, the chef at Slack paid $1.2 million in taxes.
Yeah.
From their RSUs. Like, are you such a? Where do you think you got this? Probably.
Right,
Like the $1.2 million.
Yeah, but that order of magnitude
probably paid in taxes on their RSUs at Slack. Like, you absolute moron. Like, you're literally so upset about their mansion and dunking, and you're dunking on an individual's name. But anyway, the fact that we hate entrepreneurs who create jobs and wealth, or certain people do, is just insane. It's just insane. Like, you could go change the tax code. It's fine. Like, raise the minimum wage. Like Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren attacking Bezos endlessly, and then Amazon starts paying $22 an hour, gives you benefits, and pays for your college. And it's like, okay, hold on a second. I know what Bezos just did. He took the platform that you could never actually enact, and he enacted it inside of Amazon. If it's not perfectly clear what just happened, literally he's dunking on you. You wanted free college and couldn't get it done. He gave it to Amazon employees. You wanted a $15 minimum wage. He made it $22. And you wanted everybody to have universal health care, and he gave universal health care. Like, that is literally what Bezos did to them. How embarrassing.
Maybe you could argue
them.
that like them pushing him pushed it, but
No.
Yeah.
Definitely, it is literally him showing like, it's the Amazon crew showing like, let the free markets work. Like, the DoorDash, Uber, Amazon, Starbucks, absolute race and battle to just hire entry-level employees and make it delightful for them is what has driven, and a lack of immigration is what has driven these salaries up, right? Mm-hmm. And the benefits up. It's extraordinary what's happened with the free market. Minimum wage is still $7. Federal minimum wage is $7 and change still, right? And 15 here in the city. In New York is 15. Like, yeah, it's weird.
All right, listeners, it is time to tell you about one of our favorite things now that Jason is out of the room temporarily. For all of us who have been paying attention in this crazy space, there are now a ton of options for picking a corporate card and expense management software. So how do you cut through the noise? What's the difference between all of these companies? Well, any founder or CFO who's expanding globally and is becoming really like an enterprise grade company will tell you most are really not up to the job. Reimbursements take forever, issuing cards internationally, huge pain, and they basically never offer currency visibility.
Totally. Well, this is why, so Brex was one of the first corporate cards, as most folks know.
The first new innovative
startup, corporate card for startups, that's how they started. But now they've added on a whole spend management platform on top of the corporate card, and it makes so much sense for it to all be together. Like,
the data being integrated lets them do really great stuff to, like, you want your employees to be compliant, so it ensures 100% compliance, but also you need it to be easy for them. So you can do cool stuff like have managers set budgets, and then as long as people are spending within those budgets, then they're just in policy, everything's always approved all the time, no receipt chasing.
So no receipt chasing, no approvals, it's all just done. It's all integrated.
And they really are thinking about this the way enterprise companies who are expanding globally and deal with lots of contractors in lots of countries with lots of currencies and just need like a command center that they're not going to outgrow. That is really when you need Brex.
Yeah, like globally, like how many companies these days, even startups, employ people globally who are, not just need to be paid, but then are like spending, buying things, going to dinners, etc. around the world. Like, you need something that operates globally. So
plus,
it's awesome.
The remote work thing is here to stay. They shared the stat with us. More than half of the startups in the last YC batch are from outside the US. And then there was another one. Accenture said that workforce models with productivity anywhere are now used by 63% of growth companies. So remote is not going away. So you really do need to figure this out for people who live everywhere.
Despite you and I and Jason being together here in person today. Yeah. We are remote. So many of you are, we know, too, obviously. The last thing that we want to tell you about with Brex today is related to being remote in different time zones. Brex now has 24/7 enterprise class, enterprise grade support, which is important because if something goes really wrong with your spend in a time zone half the world away when everybody in HQ is asleep, you really want somebody to be on that. So Brex now 24/7 is able to take care of everything.
Yep. If you have global enterprise ambitions, Brex is the answer. And of course, they have a great mobile app. They were like one of the first corporate card programs to have a delightful mobile app. And now that they're serving large, growing customers around the world, they can do everything from that mobile app too.
Indeed, indeed. If you want to learn more about Brex cards and spend management and why both of those together are now loved by teams all over the world, go visit brex.com/acquired or click the link in the show notes.
Thanks, Brex.
We referenced this at the start of our conversation. You're working as hard or harder than you ever have. You said you've got a new well of energy.
Yes.
Tell us about it.
Well, I find great purpose in what I do. And when my friend Tony Hsieh died, I really thought deeply about like what I wanted to get out of the rest of my life. And I realized like these are the things I really love doing. And these are things maybe not so much. And I just realigned my life over the last 2 years. And
So what are those buckets?
2 buckets?
Yeah, exactly. So I can tell you the things that just to me, I'm just not going to get any pleasure about in life. Working like, no offense to my incredible lawyers, but negotiating term sheets and legal and HR issues and accounting and operations and tax and, you know, that entire stack of things. Not fun to me. Not fun at all.
And I'm sure you never viewed that as fun, but at least before you were like, I'm willing to put up with it because maybe it's a thing that creates value enough for me to do it.
Doing my podcast every day. Absolute joy. Entertaining an audience, you know, thinking about the world and having these conversations. I had Toby from Shopify on today. Like, I leave the Toby interview. It's like his 3rd or 4th time on the pod.
That's awesome.
So cool.
And it's just like, instead of us having dinner or lunch, we just record a pod. The end.
Did you do it in person or did he?
No, just hopped on Zoom.
Yeah.
He had to start it because he did that tweet about his compensation tool,
Yeah.
where here's your total comps.
You can
use
move
the
the slider.
I was like, that's brilliant. Come on the show. You want to come on the show and talk about it? He's like, yeah, of course. And so like those conversations, I just looked at them and I'm like, my energy coming out of the show is on 11. Why am I not doing this every day? And I watched Howard Stern when I was a kid or Charlie Rose do it day in and day out. And I was like, I could be like those guys. They, every day, get on there, and they seem to love it. And I do. And so I just committed to doing it every day. And I love it.
Isn't it weird when there's something that takes a ton of work but somehow doesn't drain you?
Not at all. To me, it's like going to the gym. It's like working out or having dinner. It's just something I do every day that gives me great joy. And then I recruited Molly. I was like, I need somebody to do this with me every day.
Oh, yeah.
Who I respect and who's awesome and brings something to the table that I don't have.
And
She's so great.
Having someone to play off of,
Sure.
like I feel like that's the thing that's kept Acquired going.
Yeah.
Is that like you and I can like
I don't know how you did it alone for
I don't know
a
either.
decade.
I'd have guests on. It was largely a guest-driven show, and then I would do the news roundtable once a week because it was once a week, then twice a week, then 3 times a week, and then I was like, well, however many I just sell out, I'll do it 5-6 days a week, whatever. I enjoy meeting with founders when they fit a certain profile, but it's very hard to meet with a large number of founders given how many are coming in, and it's hard to work with them when they're just talkers.
Yeah.
To me, that's a very hard part of the job because it becomes very repetitive.
So how have you excised that?
Well, I created a platform, Founder University, where if you want to build something, I will talk myself to 200 people. You can build, and then whatever arises as the performance and the product, and as people move from talkers to the walkers when they actually start building stuff, that's when I get great joy.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, bring me the people who have product velocity. So I told my team, listen, my team does 6, people don't understand the scale of the business I have.
I don't.
Really understands what I'm doing, and I kind of like it that way, but the Angel Syndicate is now the largest syndicate in the world. I've deployed like $185 million in my career as an angel investor. I'm doing $50 million a year now.
That's awesome.
I'm raising the 4th fund in public, like 11,000 angels in the syndicate. Like this is going at a really significant velocity. If you were to look at the slope, it's not quite a hockey stick, but it's hockey stick-esque in terms of the total capital I've deployed. And it's in really high-quality companies I'm getting better at. There's 11, I have 22 people, and 10 on the media side and 12 on the investment side. And of the investment team, like people don't understand. They're like, oh, you're a solo GP. I'm like, yeah, with 12 people. Those people are doing 60 introductory meetings per week, 60. God. And then we're doing maybe 15, 20 second meetings. So it'll be 100 meetings a week shortly, probably in the
Across
first
10 people or 12 people.
But you're not doing the...
I'm not doing them.
Yeah.
And what happens is...
You had this line, was it on Twist,
Not
I think.
for me.
That's
a lot of
people
work.
say that's a lot of work, but you're like, yeah, but not for me.
That is the new philosophy. This is why my energy is really high.
This is your
I have told
your
everybody
unlock.
who comes to work for me, I work 60, 70 hours a week. Keep up. If you can't keep up, don't be here. I'm looking for a fixed 50, a solid 60 hours a week. If you want, you don't have to match me 67, but 60 or 70 hours a week, but keep up.
And are you looking in that team? Are you looking for like the next Jason Calacanis to be a part of that team, or is it like someone who likes doing that part, like that's Well, let me ask it more directly. Is it someone who's content with doing this, or are you looking for people that are like hungry enough to be the next Jason?
I'm open to all of it.
Yeah.
I'm open to all of it. They don't need to want to have my, absurd, unhealthy desire in my youth to be successful. And if they did, they probably wouldn't come work for me, but maybe they would. Actually, I would. So yeah, they probably would.
Not for very long, though.
Yeah, might be
you'd
like
come, you'd learn,
3 years. Yeah,
you'd extract.
Which I'm fine with too. If people come and they work for 2, 3, 4 years and they go start their own venture fund or whatever, Mazel tov, it's great. But what I told them was, let's just find the great companies. And I looked at investment team meetings. Usually they're Monday. People do it for an hour or two, and then they go to lunch. I said I want to do it twice a week, Tuesday and Thursdays, 2 to 4 p.m. Hit me with companies. So that was another innovation I did. And I also brought Mike Savino, who was my first boss when I was in my 20s doing IT, and I brought him on as president. So this is like one of my lifelong best friends. And I said, run the company. Here's what I want to do. The podcast, meet with founders, do the LP fundraising. That's it. Teach the course.
Are you enjoying the LP fundraising?
I am now, yeah. I'm kind of like, remember in X? I don't know if you watch Billions.
Oh yeah, every episode.
Great. So like at some point, he was like, I'm gonna go raise money.
Yeah, it's cap raise time.
It's cap raise time, and like Wags is like, so I got my Wags. Mike Savino's my Wags.
Yeah.
And I got my Wags who just fixes everything, and I'm like, I'm gonna go raise money. And so literally was like, we're doing 506C, and they're like,
and so you've talked about this now. You're now. You were in kind of this one bucket with your capital, and now you're going simultaneously in two directions of you want the public and you want the big institutions, right?
We'll see. I've had select institutions make small bets. The first fund was 10, the next fund was 11, and then the last fund was 44 million. The first fund I deployed in 5 years, the second fund 2 years, the third fund 2.5.
5 years. Whoa.
That was my first fund. It was, me, right. Bill Gurley, Dave Goldberg, rest in peace, Tony Shea, rest in peace, David Sachs, Chamath, just a bunch of my friends put money in, and it was to see if I wanted to be a venture capitalist and do this as a career. And I was like, yeah, I just did it over 5 years. And the second one, I raised 11. It took me 6 months to a year to raise the first. The second one took 3 to 6 months. It took 6 months. The third one took me 3 months to 6 months. And in this one, I think I'll wind up raising in the first 10 days what I raised in the first, a couple of funds.
Wow.
Like, I literally did
awesome.
2 webinars, a couple of hundred people came to each. So for people who are listening, 506C is you can raise in public, which means you just can tell people I'm raising a fund. And I was like, well, I'm doing all in. It doesn't make any money. I have This Week in Startups. And I watched a bunch of these young aspiring VCs raise publicly.
Right.
Yeah.
You didn't raise publicly.
No.
You did private.
I thought about it, but for a whole bunch of reasons.
Well, it's kind of scary because people don't do it. But if you have no track record and you want to raise, so like this guy, Mac the VC.
Yeah, you did a great episode with him.
Yeah, it was great. I had him on. I had first-time founders for a season of Angel, which is like a subsection of the This Week in Startups podcast. And I became an LP in his fund, and he just told me, I just did hundreds of meetings. I did 5 meetings a day for a year, and I raised my $10 million. And he's African-American, and he's like, it's just a matter of how hard do you want to work. And I'm like, well, be careful saying that publicly because there's a group of people who do not want you saying that. He's like, no, it's just, all you have to do is you go to AngelList, you set it up, and then you just start talking to other VCs, you talk to them, and you just have to be willing to take 50 meetings a week. And I'm like, dude, do not say that it's easy to raise a venture fund as a black man in Silicon Valley. Well, but that's his position. It's not that it's easy, but
on
that
the
it's
internet
possible.
too, you find your people who believe that with you, and then they believe in you, and then they back you, and then that's the
correct. And so the whole thing. But what I noted when I was taking my notes, watching him, was so many times people were like, "Oh, when's your next fund?" And I'm like, 3 years. They're like, "Oh, let me know." And I'm like, "Okay."
Right. Now, I'll put that right there in the place where I keep everyone who tells me.
Yeah, 3 years from now, what to do. Yeah. And so, I mentioned it on All In. I tweeted it, and all of a sudden, I had 1,000 people sign up.
Is there a limit to the number of LPs you can have?
Of course, it's 250 accredited, up to 10 million, and then 2,000 QPs. And so it's a lot more work.
And QPs,
not for you,
but not for me.
To catch everyone up,
purchasers,
yes.
people
Look
who
at
have
you playing Jason. I know you know what a QP is.
I just wanted to dish the ball.
I think it's $5 million in investable assets.
Yeah.
And then accredited now is $200 if you're an individual for the last 2 years, each of the last 2 years, and $300 if you're a couple, each of the last 2 years in income, or $1 million
In net worth.
In net worth outside of your primary residence. So there's a whole, and these things are going to change over time. But I believe that we're going to have a test for accreditation. And you'll be able to be sophisticated if you take a course. So I think that's coming in the coming years. So just like I democratized angel investing, wrote the book Angel, was the first syndicate on AngelList, the most successful syndicate on AngelList, created my own, got the domain name The Syndicate, created the largest one, have done 265 syndicate deals, by far like the largest amount of anybody, I think. I don't know.
These, I mean, now as a participant with the fund on AngelList, like these are like, those are big numbers. Like, we've done
do something consistently.
4 SPVs on AngelList, and we have the fund too. But that's a lot.
You're herding cats. You need to have a lot of people. But anyway, putting all that together, I think now's the time to democratize venture capital. So that's what I'm attempting to do here. Is I want more people who are accredited and qualified purchasers who've never been in a venture fund to look at the asset class and just consider it. It's high risk, it's high reward. I'm in 20 venture funds myself, including yours.
Thank you.
And I'm sure.
But don't pitch Jason.
I'm sure I will do yours. No, I mean I'm just going to pick them based on people I know or people I know online or been on the pod, and I'll do 1 or 2 new ones a year. And
well, this is kind of to the conversation earlier. Like on the internet, this is the democratizing thing. Nobody's going to just give you. If you just, nobody's going to just invest in your fund. But if you go do stuff,
yes,
and then people are like, oh, Jason does stuff. Great, I'm gonna back Jason. Ben does stuff.
Be of action. Yeah. And it doesn't mean you have to start a podcast. You could be a blog. You could do events.
Whatever.
You could create Founder University. Whatever it is, you can do any of those things. You could have a track where you can be an advisor to startups. Whatever it is.
Do you like the idea? I'm curious, as someone that's always raised from sort of individuals, do you like the idea of having some institution be like, can we invest $15 million?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, I've had $5 million checks, $10 million checks in the fund from fund to funds and institutions, But I would very much at some point, I don't need it, but it would be meaningful for me. Both my parents are cancer survivors, to have Memorial Sloan Kettering's endowment or an endowment.
UCSF or something like that.
Yeah, somebody like that. If they wanted, I would work really hard to try to get them a great return. I would find even more meaning in what I do.
Yep.
And I got that from Sequoia. They would have this Sequoia dinner every year for the founders, and they would say, here are what the foundations, who are LPs, are doing with the money you made for them with your companies.
Yep.
Click. Here's what Ford Foundation's doing. Here's what this foundation's doing. And you're just
their conference rooms are named after their
and the
LPs,
conferences
right?
are famously named after that. It's like,
and this is real.
Powerful.
Like I find we have like state pension funds and stuff like that.
That'll make you get
in PSL Ventures, and like you take it much more seriously. You're like, it's because it's not just about the reward. It's not like, I'm so excited about what we're going to do for them. It's like, this is really important to preserve and not grow, but like preserve this capital.
Yeah.
The psychology of doing that while you're taking big swings with asymmetric upside, that I find to be a fascinating dance.
That was like one of the seasons of Billions was he's like, I'm going to be a family office. No, I'm going to raise my own fund, right? And so there's this natural tension for acts like, which should it be? And he decided, I like when I have other people's money because he seemed to perceive like...
I think he felt that he wasn't a somebody in his ecosystem, in his community, without managing outside capital.
I think it's like playing, in the bubble with nobody in the stands versus getting on the court at Madison Square Garden, like, and there's people in the stands.
Your numbers don't mean anything unless you're putting them up for...
Dude, I'm doing this public, or I should say quasi-public. People still have to sign up to, come to a webinar. But I'm sharing with them, like, here's the totality of my investments, and here's what I've done, and here's what I plan on doing with my team. So, I'm kind of enjoying it. And if, I've met with all the top endowments in the world over the years, and they're very kind to me, but it's always been like solo GP as a blocker, no track record.
Your fund is so small.
Small fund.
We're a $50 billion endowment.
Yeah, at some point, like one of the ones who's the most rigorous, I won't say exactly which one, was like, we have a lot of respect for you. We know who you are. People would like you to sign a book and take a selfie with you when you're here. But I just want to be straight with you. we don't add many funds. And if you go through our process, it's going to take a lot of your time. And it's going to result in you not getting our money this time. I don't want to put you through that, but I respect you. And if you want to do it, we'll do it. But maybe just put one more fund on the board and let's talk in the next one. And I was like, let's do that. I don't need the money. Let's wait. And I think what a lot of these funds are doing
Was
now,
that in the last fund cycle?
That was in the third fund cycle.
Yeah, so now...
So I will contact them. What I decided to do was, let's see what my syndicate members and the public want to do. Let's see which QPs come out of the woodwork.
Yep.
And literally I did the second call this week, the first one last week. I'm doing the third one next week. And it's been so productive. I added 2 more. So I'm going to do 5 webinars this fall. And then I'm going to go on the road and start meeting with folks.
Are there any downsides to doing the raising in public thing other than...
Not that I can see. I mean, I guess you could fail in public to fail to raise the fund.
That doesn't seem like something you're scared of.
No. I could also, the freeing thing, is I looked at the model and I said, you know what I could do? I could just invest my own money in each company and then syndicate them and never have another LP.
Right. But then you're raising capital every single time you're making an investment.
Yeah, and I'm getting deal by deal carry, and I have 100% of my investment, not 25% carry on it, and I don't ever have to talk to anybody. I could just say, I'm placing this bet. Would anybody like to join me?
Yep.
And I don't have to have a fund. I don't have to do audits. I don't have to do any work.
It's so funny hearing you say this. Myself, lots of our other friends in the ecosystem that are in similar positions, they're having this same question. Like,
yes.
On the one hand, I could do what you just said and do very little work, but have it all be pure. On the other,
yeah,
I could go do what you are actually doing and like have LPs be accountable. Yeah, how did you weigh these two?
I'm going into my second decade of investing, and again, last 2 years, a lot of like sort of post-pandemic and Tony's death, thinking, like what's possible here? Because I've won so much in my life. I don't mean to be obnoxious about this. I know it probably sounds that way, but for a kid who's, going to be a cop, to be where I am, and this is why, like, when the guys break my chops on the pod, I'm like, guys, I don't aspire to be a billionaire. It's not important to me. If it was, I would do a late stage fund. I aspire to be happy and do what I love doing every day, which is the podcast. Maybe get in 40 days of skiing, hang out with my kids, take them on the mountain, and then meet with early founders and be able to say, I helped that company at the earliest stages. That to me is the rush. I found them first. I backed them first. I sat there with them and figured it out with them.
We were talking about the legendary Twist episode 180 with you and Travis.
Yes.
Like,
I mean,
that's the secret before the show stuff, David.
Yeah, that is the secret. But from the juicy before the show. I can talk
about Travis. And,
yeah, but that was like, Urbu was such a baby company back then, and like,
crazy. One city.
One city.
I invested, and I had an open angel for him where Cyan Bannister and Chris Fralick from First Round, invested in the company. I think they both met them there. Saka was there too, but he had a relationship with Travis, so I can't take any credit for that. And Kevin Systrom was watching, and I was going to kick him out because he was at this co-working space called Dog Patch Labs.
I worked there too.
Yeah,
I worked at CoTweet.
Yeah, so he was, CoTweet, I know that.
Yeah.
So he's sitting over there building bourbon.
Yep.
And
that's right.
Saka's like, can bourbon come in? I'm like, fuck no, this is like private shit. And he's like, and I'm like, just tell him to sit at his desk and I won't kick him out.
Wait, this Open Angel Forum was at Dog Patch Labs?
Here on the pier.
No way.
I think that third year, then they shut down because it was going to collapse.
Condemned, yeah.
Got condemned. So that was there. And
Naval also did a bunch of like events there for Angel Hacks.
At the time, Naval and I were very friendly. Not friendly now, but we don't hang out, but we used to hang. Kind of bummed about that, if I'm being honest. I really respect him, and he was doing something called Venture Hacks at the time. So he would just send an email with, here are the 5 companies, and I was doing it in person. And he's like, I'm going to do this thing, Angel List. I'm like, well, I'm doing this in-person thing. And he's like, great, let's just, trade notes or whatever. And then he sent me the syndicate thing. He's like, do you know about SPVs? I was like, I don't. Explain it to me. And he taught me what SPVs were. He introduced me to Assure Fund Management, which I wound up investing in.
Did you buy that?
I didn't buy it. I bought 5% of the company. I invested in it, but they back everybody, and they've done more SPVs. Like I don't know if they're up to 10,000, 5,000. I mean, they've done a ton of them. Seriously great group over there. And so he taught me how to do syndicates, and the first one I did was Calm at $4 or $5 million.
That's nuts. It's funny. I was looking for
literally winning a championship the first time you step on the court.
I was looking at your track record, getting ready for this, and I was telling David, I think the word that I used, because obviously Uber is some ridiculous multiple on a return, but then there's these other ones that are promising but early, and then there's other ones where it's been a less than Uber multiple, but still a good Uber multiple. But you look at Calm. You just, I looked at David and I was like, he sharpshootered that one.
That one I could be even more proud of because, I'll tell you why.
It was ridiculously early and a super low basis.
It was $4 million. We put $378K in on 6%, and they didn't raise any money until it was a $250 million valuation. So no dilution.
Wow.
Sharpshooter. And
it's like Vanta.
Really
Vanta
I might
was the
even,
same story.
I could even cry telling the story, but Alex too and I became very good friends, and Michael Acton, afterwards, because he wasn't actively running Calm while Alex was. Alex at some conference, I was interviewing him and doing a little victory lap for him, and giving him his flowers, and he said, I just want to stop and tell you, you don't actually know this story, but we were going to shut the company down, and Mike and I had a conversation.
What?
Do we take your money, but we're not sure about this, but you believed in us so much and you insisted on us taking the money, but we had just pitched 40 investors and they all said no. And we were trying to debate if we could in good conscience burn your money to do this. And we probably, Calm would not be here for 1 year.
And they found product market fit while burning through your money.
I think so. Because
you're take more of my money.
No. But if you think about that as that is not the case with Uber or Robinhood. I was along for the ride. Let's be honest. I did not change the trajectory of those companies.
But for Jason Calacanis, Calm
that's what they
was
said.
Not.
He said they were going to shut it down, possibly. I don't believe that they would, but I do think it was on the table.
That's real angel investing.
That's real.
There's a lot of individuals participating in venture rounds, and no offense.
Oh, hey. I don't take any offense.
So call that angel investing, but coming in when the company could die needs $100K, $200K, $300K to get it to the stage where they
revenue to date. I think when I invested,
ever.
Because they were selling the app for $10. Because remember, at the early stages, there was no subscription model.
Right, in the App Store.
You just sold an app for $10. The person had it for life. So the business model of apps was make a lighter for $1, then make lighter 2, and charge $3, and then lighter 4 would come out, and you'd be like, well, this doesn't make any sense. It's like making Microsoft Word 1.0, you buy it, you throw it away. It's like, but we could just update it. And it's like, yeah, but we need to make more money, so shut the old one down. So you'd buy Angry Birds, and you buy Angry Birds 2, Angry Birds 3, and it was a really weird time. And then they're like, yeah, we're doing. So they told me because I was under NDA as well. Hey, subscriptions are coming. That's going to change everything, and they were going to do $10 a year. And I said to Alex and Michael, how much does it cost to go to a meditation class? It's donation based, and there's only 10 places you can go. I'm like, well, what's the suggested donation? It's $20 in LA. I said, you want to charge $10 a year? It's $20 a month. How often do you have to do this to get value?
$20 a visit. Right.
Yeah, $20 a visit. I said, how often do you have to do this to get value? It should be a daily practice. We're like, well, how often do you have to go and learn? I said, if you go weekly, that's good. I was like, so it's $80 a month to go, and we're charging $10 a year, so that's $1,000 a year versus $10. What if it was $10 a month? They're like, we've been thinking about that. I was like, okay, and they're like, okay, yeah, I think we're going to do that. And then they went to $10 a month or whatever, and then it wound up at $60 a year, whatever it was. But it became a money printing machine pretty quickly.
So I've never made an investment at pre-product market fit that's now worth over $1 billion. That's a very early to very successful. And I'm curious. Did it feel any different when you were making that investment? Were you there's something more special here,
of course,
than my normal investment?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Really?
Absolutely. And that's what I've basically turned into a playbook at launch, and that I'm teaching these 12 people how to do that.
What do you think it was? What was, when you look back and you're
9 factors.
9 factors?
9.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Wow. Angel.University.
Angel.University.
No, I don't even teach at Angel University, but
Oh.
I'm training my team when they're meeting with those 60 companies, and every time they pitch me one, they say this has 3 of the 9, this has 4 of the 9. And then I'm creating the anti-list. These are the things that kill companies. So how many of the 15 things, we have a long list of things that kill companies. How many of the red flags does it have? Reasons to not invest. How many reasons to invest does it have? And like one of them for me, and everybody's got their different philosophy, I won't give all of them, but one of them is world-class design. And so I'm trying to teach people what world-class design is. And world-class design to me is if you were to look at all the companies in the space, this one would have the best design. Or this would be one of the top 10%. So if you were to look at something like Calm or Robinhood, okay, they're the best looking app with the best UX of all of anybody in the category.
Right.
So Calm was better than Headspace, Robinhood was better than E-Trade. I mean, it just doesn't take a rocket science to look at them. But when I first explained this to my team, they would bring me companies and they'd say, world-class design. And I'm like, they're like, I really like the design. I'm like, pull it up. And they pull it up and I'm like, that's a template from, like a website builder and it's a stock photo, but where's the actual design of the product? And they're like, oh, that's on this product page. And my product page, and I was like, okay, yeah, again, that's just like if this was a bank's website, maybe, but that's not world-class. That's serviceable design. That's utilitarian design. That's okay design. That's good design. It's not world-class. So if we're going to say world-class, like a world-class performance is different than a serviceable performance. World-class cinematography, world-class script, world-class dialogue. That's different. And then product velocity is the other one I like. So, okay, we met with this company in June. It's now July. What's changed about the product? And they're like, we don't know. I'm like, okay, well, let's find out. Where's their change log? Where's their roadmap? So in the earliest stages, you might have revenue traction or user traction, but you might be able to ask them for their product roadmap. And somebody like Travis would be like, yeah, here, get on the phone with this guy and we'll walk you through it. Here's what we're debating about on Sunday. We're reprioritizing
And then a month later, they've
check. And then you go we're with Raul with Superhuman, and I was an investor in his company before that report of Raul, the change log at Superhuman.
Superhuman. That people don't realize,
they're bink, new feature. Oh, boom, we fixed Grammarly. Oh, bink, we have calendar. Boop. Oh, we got a new calendar feature. Boop, we got this feature. And you're like,
So here's an interesting question. We should ask Raul this, because we've had him on the show 3 times now.
Product genius.
The parallels between Superhuman and Figma are uncanny. Design-led founder, revolutionary design in the software, rewriting the entire browser stack in order to get the performance. And I remember it being breakthrough when it came out. And then the only thing that I can recall being different between then and now is adding a calendar thing that I don't use and a mobile app and iPad support. And why?
Outlook support. You just don't, when you hit Command K, you probably know 50% of the features.
Right.
Do you use Remind Me of this?
I do.
Okay, great. Do you use labels? Do you do snippets?
I do.
Okay. Yeah.
Which it was all there when I started using it 4 years ago.
I think a lot of those things have gotten better and better.
Yeah. So it's just that polish.
I really want them to make snippets multiplayer. I want to share my snippets.
Oh yeah.
Oh, with your team.
Yeah, I love. Yeah, so
I want all of David's pass emails. They're so nice.
I don't do email anymore.
You do it on the phone?
No, I just don't do email.
David just doesn't
I don't email anybody.
When you pass on a company,
do have all your pass emails from.
I've been literally creating a collection of how to pass with my team, and I'm standardizing that.
I'm trying to.
Great for founders.
I don't know that I'll be successful, and this may be a mistake, but I'm trying to just not have. I don't end up having a conversation with the company if I'm not going to invest.
No, but you must say, "Hey, we are not going to invest." You've took a pitch.
Oh no, I get it. I don't.
How do you say no?
I don't.
You basically don't take a pitch unless you're going to invest. It's the weirdest thing.
Oh, that's very weird. So you do all your work up front. You front load it, the deck, everything.
We're in this unique position, as you are too, but with Acquired, where we have every 6 months we have 6 companies that we work with on the show as our sponsors and our partners, and we get to know them really well.
Modern Treasury, and
I'm now an investor in just about all of those companies.
Okay, fair enough. Got it.
So it's not like they're pitching me.
It's growth stage investing.
Yes, it's growth stage investing.
They're clearly the winner.
Yeah.
They're not yet priced as if they're the winner most of the time.
Yeah, exactly.
They're gonna just keep compounding.
Yeah, good luck. Yeah. Pricing's going to be hard. Depending on entry price.
We'll see.
Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen to these companies after, flat is the new up, but I think, 50% haircut is the new flat.
Well, public comps got hit 50+%.
Yeah, I mean,
This week they got hit harder again.
Yeah, I mean, I'm buying equities right now. I've been doing it at jtrading.com, and I am going to buy more.
Sorry about all my picks a couple weeks ago.
Which one?
Whatever I told you.
I actually love Taiwan Semiconductor.
Good memory.
And Stitch Fix was the other one.
Stitch
No,
Fix
I did not
wasn't
say
yours.
Twilio.
Twilio was yours, and I love that one too. And I like Shopify as a pick. I'm actually really enjoying it. It's really
Not investment
balancing
advice?
out, not investment advice, but it's balancing out my understanding of what public success is compared to private. And so for me, it's just a way, like, am I going to fight with a blaster? No, I'm a Jedi. I use a lightsaber. But,
But if
I'll
you
learn
look
to use a
at the
blaster.
very best,
It's not as elegant.
It's helpful. It's really helpful.
It's
if you look at the
super
very
helpful.
best people, the best GPs
Like Hono.
in venture over the past 2 decades,
Sure.
they all trade public stocks.
Yes.
And they
Bill
do it for
Gurley.
this same reason. They're going to fight with the saber, but like they want to know how to also use a blaster.
Yeah, or how to fight in an X-Wing or something. Like, it's not what a Jedi does, but Jedi will do it.
It also keeps you really sensitive to the public cycles, so that, like,
Yes.
it's not that you have to think about the public comps when you're investing, but you have to be aware of how much those will change.
Yeah.
And early stage investing, it's almost silly to compare to, like, my opinion is it's very silly to compare to public comps, because the only thing you know for sure is we're going to be at a different place in the cycle by the time this company gets liquid. So it's ridiculous, but it's helpful to drive into you, like, how much variability there is. When was the last time it was this different? That sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying understanding what the founders of those companies go through versus the founders of the private companies that go through. What the board's decisions the board has to make of a public company versus the board of a private company.
Yeah.
So I'd like to join a public board at some point. It's probably not a good idea for me to have said that, because I might get an invite for one, and that might be too much work. But hey, especially given the market right now, I better be careful.
But you
Somebody
could
might
also
invite
be
me to do that. But it's been
especially
great.
through the show now. You have relationships with public company founders.
Sure, of course.
That
Yeah.
you
I mean,
can,
if I really wanted to, I'm sure I could lobby.
Oh, I'm not
20
saying you
I know
don't
and
have
get
to be on the
spot.
board though. You can have a
Yeah,
great
I'm just
relationship
enjoying doing
with
the analysis, and I'm doing it anyway with Molly every day. Okay, Twilio's or Adobe's come out. I just bought Adobe this week when they bought Figma.
So funny. So did I. Not investment advice.
Not investment advice, but I was like,
They bought Figma,
What was your theory?
tanked. Okay, so here's my theory on this. They bought Figma and tanked. And I was like, why did people hate this? And they're like, oh no, Adobe's admitting defeat and that, like, they can't innovate
Smart.
in-house. And to me, I look at it like Adobe has customer channel, and it was foretold 5+ years ago that they were not going to build the next Figma. Like, that would be a full rewrite of their entire software stack.
Yep.
So buying the thing, even though they paid a tremendous premium, because 50x revenue multiple because of the network effects that Figma has, and obviously all the product stuff, but if they can get that through Adobe's channel, like, I think that is an absolute win-win acquisition. And all these people that are like, oh, they're going to ruin it, they're going to kill Figma. No, they're not. That's why they paid $20 billion for it and have a gigantic bonus for Dylan to stay on board.
yes, they're taking a YouTube approach. I think everybody in M&A knows now.
Yeah.
Like,
Or
let it be
WhatsApp.
Just leave it alone. Don't screw it up. And then, so I like your analysis. I added to that analysis is, if you're not going to win the war, and you can build an alliance and then fight another war, like, they've just removed the downside of Figma creating Photoshop.
I'd be concerned for Adobe if they didn't buy Figma.
Correct. So the fact that you're giving us a discount on the shares for them doing the right thing is like Christmas. Like, thank you.
Yeah.
Yep.
You just discounted the right move. Fantastic. It would be like, people are like, oh, the Warriors signed Kevin Durant. And you know what? We're going to lower
their biggest odds are going
lowering
down.
the cost.
But they paid a lot to get him on the team, so...
Yeah, and you know what? We're going to lower the cost of the tickets. It's like, okay, I'll buy courtside seats, or or they're lowering the odds in Vegas. It's like, wait, why are you lowering the odds? Their odds increased. I'll place that bet. So it's just an obvious bet. And then there's all that's left is Canva, and Melanie's awesome.
Totally different thing.
But yeah, and they have a free Canva already. And what if there's always the internal people who are penciling out that spreadsheet.
Yep.
There's a group of MBAs who penciled out that spreadsheet with Figma. No offense to MBAs who are listening. And they said, hey, boss, if X, Y, Z. And they said, here's like 5 potential paths. if we make Figma free for 10 users and whatever, or if we, take whatever Figma costs and then we blend it with the Adobe suite, okay, we would get this many more Figma users. But we know when we get Figma users, then we get non-designers to pay for it. So right now, Adobe has a bunch of designers paying for it.
Right.
But they may not have all the non-designers in there.
Only designers pay Adobe.
Right.
Well, no,
But
they have Marketing Cloud, but that's a totally
only
different set
creatives.
of...
But when you look at Figma, like I got a Figma account, like people who are giving feedback on designs, the business side, the sales side can get into Figma. So
Plus they got the whole creator class.
Exactly. So I think you're opening up the aperture of who design software is for with Figma. It's for BD. It's for the CEO. Sure, the CFO can come in and take a look at the product. Oh, legal should come in and take a look at the product. Yeah, buy them a seat. So it's like Slack is for the dev team. And it's like, and the sales team. And ops. And anybody else might as well be on there because that's where everybody is. So that's one of the things that happen with Figma. It's like everybody's going to have a Figma account in the future just to watch the product team build the product and put a comment in. And who cares if it's $100 a year? It's cost of doing business.
Any company that has like that kind of strong network effects inside an organization deserves a meaningful revenue multiple because their differentiator is literally the company's moat. So like I tweeted this, but like if I have a castle and it has a moat around it that is much wider or deeper than your identical castle, shouldn't you pay more for my castle because it's more defendable?
100%. Like the virality of it. I think Sachs made this point on All In 2 weeks ago, which was like, if they're paying 50x now and the company's growing, okay, they're paying 20x next year, 25x, who cares?
Right.
This thing's such a high growth company. And then I was just thinking, well, somebody's got a theory there. And when I sold weblogs to AOL, people were like, oh my God, these people are idiots. They gave $30 million to, for Weblogs Inc. They've only got $200K in revenue. What they didn't realize was AOL Autos, AOL Tech, AOL Lifestyle, those were sold out at like a $90 RPM, revenue per 1,000 pages. The ads were different CPMs. So then they would put an Engadget or an Autoblog story or Blogging Baby or whatever other blog we had on the homepage of AOL. And 500,000 people would flow through. And then they would put those ads on our sites. And then they would blow out $50,000 or $100,000 in ads a day on a blog. And those people were like, great. Because it was costing AOL to make content like $500 per piece of content, $3,000 per piece of content on AOL.com/autos, whatever. And we were doing it for, at the time, $5 a blog post. Because we said, well, people can write 4 an hour, so it's $20 an hour, and it's $6 minimum wage. It made sense.
God,
15 years ago.
The media game has changed so much.
And then I was like,
you guys were doing $200K annual revenue?
We had done $200K to date.
Holy
over the 18 months.
What is it? I mean, now like the world
people
we're in
looked
today,
at the multiple and they were like, JCal just robbed AOL. And I was like, okay,
$30 million sale?
But now, like,
I look like an idiot.
What do you think? Like, here's
I look like an idiot 5 years later, and that's the best M&A is when you look like you robbed the bank, and then 5 years later, it looks like you robbed the founder. YouTube,
Instagram,
Figma will be in this category. Like, when they bought Instagram, they're like 30 people work at this company, and they gave them $1 billion. You guys are morons. And now it's $150 billion company.
Here's a thought exercise question. Obviously irrelevant because you don't monetize it.
Yeah.
What do you think the enterprise value of All In is?
Well, it would do $10 million in. When I was at the Code conference, a lot of people have been trying to buy it or put it as part of their network, obviously,
which would kill it.
Yeah, my partners are right. Like, let's not make money from it. Part of the delightfulness of it is that we're not trying to monetize it.
Well, but you do get huge economic value out of it,
even without monetizing. Shmuck pulled me aside at some point and was like, "Hey, Shmuck, like, just we're friends. Like, your next fund will be bigger than the revenue." And I was like, when you have a friend who can be like, "Hey, dumbass," like that's a good friend. So I appreciate Shmuck saying that, and he's right, and it's playing out. And we had a rule: no talking our books on the pod. But we kind of talked about it. And we're like, the pod is great when we talk about our bets. Right. So explaining our bets, not talking our book, is the new philosophy. So
you guys just started doing that.
Talked about his SPAC.
Friedberg still has a SPAC.
He did. He just found a target for it.
Yeah. Chamath talked about the healthcare company.
The healthcare company, which is, we wanted to talk about that because Chamath and I both agree, like maybe like we're definitely overprescribing these drugs to kids,
yeah.
like for ADHD and attention drugs, and adults are taking too many. I think that's not disputable. I think all the science is showing that. So, to make software that could help kids with ADHD is like noble. But I think people want to hear us explain our bets. So, explaining our bets, I think, is kind of a cool aspect of the show. Talking your book is lame, but explaining your bets is cool. So anyway, in the event, did a couple $1 million, had a small profit. But it was the number one tech event of the year by far.
Right.
So, I'm kind of bummed that, Friedberg's a little bit of a blocker for it, but I might turn him around and we'll have a vote maybe in the fall.
Doing another one? Oh.
Well, I'm going to do another one. The question is, am I doing it under the All-In brand, or do I have to create a new brand for it?
Yep.
And so I told the guys, listen, I'm going to do it again.
Well, Code Conference is done, so there's a vacuum.
Code Conference is done. Yeah, they need a new host.
That's crazy that can be done. Like, it's such a valuable...
No, I talked to Bankoff about it, and he's been very public. Kara Swisher, I think, is going to do the pivot stuff and wants to do other stuff. And, I really respect what Kara has done, in terms of, like, she does stuff and then she moves on to the next thing and tries. Like, it's kind of my approach as well, which is like Bob Dylan, said, like, don't look back kind of thing. And he always tried to make the next album and forget about the past one. And much to the chagrin of people who loved him as a folk artist and didn't like, like a Rolling Stone. And when he went electric, they booed him. It's like, really? You're booing Bob Dylan because he's using an electric guitar? Are you guys dumb? Like, did you hear All Along the Watchtower? Like, this is incredible. And so I think, Kara Swisher, like, is moving on, but Jim said he's going to keep doing it. And, it's probably a small list of people who could actually host that credibly, a very small list. And so,
which you're definitely on.
I am? You think?
How could you not be on
that work?
I mean, I'm not even saying that to, like, make you feel like...
No, I'm joking.
Yeah, of course
I'm being a little bit facetious.
Okay. You're joking about being humble.
But if it had, if it
anyway,
had that kind of prestige, it seems like Friedberg would want to do it. It seemed more like the thing he was averse to is the, like...
I mean, whatever the issue is, like, we've had our issues. We all have issues. But I think there's basically two possibilities for All In Summit. I'm going to present it to the boys and say, like, here's the plan. Yes or no, and we agree, we'll put it to a vote. So we put it to a vote. If 3 of us want to do it, we'll do it. And if 2 of us want to do it, then we can't. And if Friedberg already said, if you do it on your own with a different name, I'll come and support you and I'll show up to do a talk or do an interview or whatever. And I was like, great. So I'll do it with a different name if they don't want to do it. And the fans can decide if they want to come or not.
Partially in.
Partially in, exactly. So, it's up to the boys if they want to do it, but it was like a pretty great success.
You already have call-in, so.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I started doing a call-in show called After All In for the last 2 episodes, where I took calls about the last episode of All In, just to support David, because I don't think people remember how great that app is, and it's really made great progress, so I want to be supportive of him, and I have a small investment in it.
Do you...
very meaningful, but...
On the one hand, this is ridiculous. On the other hand, it might be ridiculously low.
It's worth $50 million, to answer your question. $50 to $100 million. I mean, as a top 40 podcast, it's worth at least $50 million.
On its own, though. But I mean, like, economic value that the 4 of you...
Oh, who knows?
Over the lifetime.
If Chamath or Sachs or I or Friedberg were to get but one more deal out of it, and it's an Uber, the economic value is 9 figures, possibly 10. So yes.
But that's the thing. Like, I think, like, man, weblogs, like, you were doing $200K of revenue, you sold it for $30 million.
Pretty great takeaway. Yeah.
And now look at this, like, Yeah,
I mean, listen, I hope it keeps going. I hope we can keep it on track. And I love doing pods. This Week in Startups is a juggernaut as well. It's been sold out for 10 years, and All In is...
What is that, like 250,000 listeners or something?
Yeah, something in that range. Yeah, I mean, it's hundreds of thousands per episode, and it's a very niche podcast. I'm not trying to make it All In. I'm trying to make it for founders, and so if in order to make it bigger, it'd have to be worse for founders. Right. And
that's what we talk about.
It's like what we think about with our show.
Well, I want founders and capital allocators to listen to it. And I'm not trying to move up the rankings. I don't mind, hanging with, All In being number 1 in tech, and then hanging out with you guys at, slumming it at 6 to 15 with you guys in the rankings. It's like, that's where we belong.
Look, I got number 1 on
4 to 6, but who's counting?
Whatever, that's where we belong with these things, right? It's a niche podcast by definition, right? Like, it's not supposed to appeal to everybody, and you try. If you want to appeal to everybody, like, read the Bible. Like, that's... Right. If you go to
this is the beauty of the
this
internet,
guy who reads Bible passages, and
huge.
It's like if you could literally
true crime,
religion, read the Bible, or Ben Shapiro dunking on libs. The end. That's how you get Rogan. Or do it daily. But Joe Rogan's out, right? He's on Spotify. So,
right.
He's not in the other rankings. So or do a daily news program for 20 minutes. but that's not what I want to do. I want to talk for an hour or 3 about deep topics in founders and capital.
What would be a fun acquired episode is Howard Stern. I feel like it's underappreciated how much Howard Stern
I copied my. That's the playbook.
That should be the next Taylor Swift type episode that we do.
Yeah, no, for sure.
He wrote the playbook.
I literally took notes for it. King of all media.
Do you know him?
I have never met him. Would love to at some point. I have a lot of respect for him. I mean, obviously, he did crazy stuff when he was young, and that shock jock stuff. But he, in his later years, became a great interviewer. Great interviewer. He really refined his technique. I really appreciate that about him. And he created characters. Sound familiar?
Yep.
He branded them.
Yep.
He showcased them. The Whack Pack, all this stuff.
Did he ever do an event?
He used to do live events. He did the U.S. Open Source, and then he would do Howard Stern's New Year's Eve celebration. So yes, he did the equivalent of those in New York, but it was a very New York thing. So he played tennis against Baba Booey, but he got 10,000 people to show up and buy tickets to a tennis match that they pumped up, for whatever number of months. I remember this from my childhood, and then he did his books, which were phenomenal.
And then he did a movie.
He did a movie, he did TV shows, so he's done a lot of stuff. And I'm just starting the process of doing a reality show right now. So I'm literally going to do
Are you really?
Yeah. I had
just
done
you
one.
Or the besties? Or?
No, just me. The besties don't want to do it. They don't have time for it. There was talk of maybe All In, kind of going onto one of those services. People had reached out hey, would this work?
That's a lot more work, though.
Wait,
well, we would have to show up in a location. We'd have to do it weekly. There'd be some format, some shiny floor, whatever. It's a different beast. I don't think they have the time for it, if I'm being honest. But for me, I would like to do a reality show in the Gordon Ramsay kind of vein, where I'm helping founders. I think it would be great for reach. So I had done a reality TV show with NBC. And the Weinstein Corporation.
Oh, wow.
And it didn't make it on air, but I have the...
You should be a Shark Tank judge.
They had reached out before. Mark Burnett had reached out early on when it was Dragon's Den. Before when they were going to bring it here. So when it was Dragon's Den, they had reached out early, but I wasn't very successful back then. I think now, I would have the credibility and the advice to give that I could do a Gordon Ramsay style show that would be very entertaining and educational and be completely different than, the fundraising aspect and the pitch aspect of Shark Tank. So I'm not going to do that, but I've got, I won't say which one, but a very major reality TV folks reached out, I think, in part because All In was doing so well.
Would founders and companies feel comfortable? I feel like a really amazing window and insight would be the type of conversations that you have with a founder as they're building the company.
Yeah, so
would founders and companies be open to that?
Yeah, so the NBC show I had done the pilot for, which never made it on air. What was really good was really about me incubating companies, and they spent $400,000 or $500,000 doing the pilot. It was really good, and it would have been a big hit.
Did it get canceled because of the Harvey Weinstein stuff? Yeah. Wow, so they were just anything that was in his company.
And all the IP is dead because he's a monster, and anything associated with it. But you got to remember, he did Project Runway, so he had done some of these giant shows. People don't know that about that, and so
that's right. I forgot. That had the TWC at the beginning.
Exactly. So I just NBC. NBC bought the show in the room, loved it, and did the pilot. And it came close. And Chamath was on that episode. Actually, he did the pilot with me.
Oh my god!
He was my VC friend who came in, and it was
my VC friend.
It's hilarious. I'm excited to do it. If it works out, it works out. If it doesn't, no skin off my back. But I like the media space, and then, this is the thing. I'm choosing to do media because I get joy out of it. I'm 51 now. I'll be gone soon. I want to enjoy.
I'll be gone soon.
Well, you never know. And I've had
you've mentioned your friends, yeah.
I have 2 friends who died young, and I'm just I talked to my wife. I was like, I don't know. What if I make it another year or make it 25 years? But I want to make it count. I'm not going for max dollars. Like, and then, so when the guys break my chops about that, I'm like, guys, it's not my priority. Like, literally, maximizing money is like.
Well, also, like, you're probably at a point now where, like,
it's literally not in the top 10.
What is more money going to do?
Unlikely.
Like, you know,
it literally
you get a plane. Like,
about my life. Like, you guys understand my life. Like,
yeah.
It is ridiculous and charmed. Like, I can do whatever I want. I have enough money to do whatever I want. My kids are fine. I can have whatever I want. I don't care about like a third home. Like, I have a ski house. I have my regular house. It's good. I'm good. My kids have their college paid for. I'm good. 100%. I literally do not care about more money.
Do you feel like that's a demon that you fight? Is like any allure toward?
No, I had it when I was younger. I wanted to be powerful. I wanted to be important. I wanted to have money. I wanted to be seen. I wanted people to recognize my greatness, like any person recognize me for what I do. I got all that. It literally does not even come up my radar. To have more money is the last thing I'm thinking about. I do want to, be the greatest investor of all time.
Yeah.
Like, to me, that's meaningful. Or be one of the, I want to be, like, I know I'm Mount Rushmore for angels.
Yeah.
I want to be Mount Rushmore for all investors. So when you guys do your thing in 10, 20 years, and it's like, okay, here's Doug Leone and Moritz, and, here's,
Gurley.
John Doerr, here's Gurley. Like, it would, if we are making a Mount Rushmore,
you want to be on that with them.
I would like to make it there, or at least be in the conversations.
All right, listeners, we kicked Jason out of the room again because we have our next sponsor of the episode, our very good longtime friends over at Tiny.
The Berkshire Hathaway of the internet, if you'll recall.
Indeed. So they're so much so the Berkshire Hathaway of the internet that, as we told you about a few seasons ago, they literally built a business on the internet selling busts of Warren and Charlie that you can order.
BerkshireNerds.store.
BerkshireNerds.store. That's not what we're here to talk to you about today, though.
They've got something new to share with us this season that we've been talking a little bit about, kind of from the founder angle, but we want to share with you from the VC angle.
Yeah. So the core business of Tiny is acquiring wonderful internet businesses. These are businesses doing $5 million or more in revenue at 30 to 40% operating margins.
Well, and the DNA really comes from Andrew and his partners originally running MetaLab, and of course, it is a very successful design agency that started spitting off cash. What do you do with the extra cash? Well, they know how to run a great internet business with MetaLab, and so they started buying more and more and more businesses. And so now with this awesome portfolio...
Companies like Dribble, Pixel Union, Creative Market, 80/20, Girl Boss, these are all Tiny companies. And...
So what are they doing differently now? It's funny. It's different in a sense, but it really is the same Tiny playbook that they've always been running to buy wonderful internet businesses. But something changed in the last 5 years. We were in this crazy go-go era where lots of businesses, even ones that really aren't the shape of what venture capital should be funding, well, most venture capitalists were funding those businesses too. And so you end up in this situation where you've got a lot of companies that have raised a lot of money that probably aren't tripling, quadrupling year over year the way you would sort of expect a venture business to be doing to raise their next round of capital, especially in this environment. And so if the business is growing, 20, 30, 40%, and it can get profitable or it is profitable, well,
that doesn't really make sense in the context of a venture portfolio.
Right. But the founders probably want to keep running that business. They probably want to keep serving those customers, doing their life's work.
Exactly. And you end up with a lot of these companies in a portfolio that are like capable of being Tiny like businesses, but are not going to provide a big exit that's going to move the needle for the venture portfolio. Well, Tiny realized they can provide the perfect solution to this problem for the VCs on the boards of these companies, for the founders running these companies, and most importantly for Tiny to then come in, partner with these founders, and own these companies in perpetuity without looking for an exit.
So really what Tiny can kind of do is come in, buy the company from the VCs, or a lot of the company from the VCs.
The VCs get their money back.
Some or all of the money back. And most importantly,
get their time back, get off the board, so they have capacity to do new deals.
So it's great for founders to keep doing their life's work. They can figure out a structure with Tiny where
Tiny's very good at figuring out structures that make sense.
Yes, they're
to align
incentives
interests
masters.
Here. Yes, it's really super cool. Like I've talked with a bunch of folks of varying different financial groups and institutions over the years who have had some version of this idea, and it's never gotten off the ground. And I'm so glad that Tiny is now doing it, and they are the perfect ones to do it. and this is the perfect time to do it. So very excited for this to exist.
Yes. Well, if you are running a business like that, or you are invested in a business like that, or your friend is invested in a business like that, you really should shoot a note to hi@tiny.com and just tell them that Ben and David sent you.
Don't tell him Jason sent you.
He's not here right now.
You can say Jason sent them too.
All right. Our thanks to Tiny.
When you guys are having the conversation in 20 years and I'm gone or I'm retired, and you're saying Mount Rushmore.
Hard to imagine you retiring.
Yeah, I think it's possible. I met Don Valentine when they were like, he was not active investing, but when I pitched Mahalo, he was in the room. He came up. I talked to him.
He was still hanging out there all the time.
Awesome. Yeah. Like why retire? He was just awesome. But if you had that conversation right now about Mount Rushmore, like you gotta. Okay, so
who's on your Mount Rushmore?
Well, I mean, you gotta have Don Valentine.
Yeah.
Right. That's just not possible. But
and how are you scoping it? Because you probably need Paul Graham too.
Well, yeah, I mean, you got Paul Graham is in the running for sure, but that's like a number of startups, but there's a lot of big ones in there. Yeah, big impact. So Paul Graham's definitely in the running, but okay, so do you go with John Doerr's in there along with, so if you're doing firms, it's a lot easier because you get Khosla, Doerr, and Tom Perkins. You get the three of them at once.
Yeah,
you do Sequoia,
which people forget. Vanilla Khosla spent a decade at Klein & Perkins with John Doerr.
And you had so I mean you look at that firm, it's like that's like the OKC with like James Harden, whatever. Right. But then you have Doug, Leone, Mike Moritz, and
Jim
Valentine.
Getz, Ruloff.
Well, Ruloff's next generation.
But you had all of them there active all at the same time.
For those 30 years, and it's like, well, that's Mount Rushmore, right? So if it's a Mount Rushmore of Mount Rushmores, is kind of how you might look at it. You definitely have to have
the
Sequoia
did benchmark.
and Kleiner.
You got to
have to go early.
The Fab Four era of
the Fab Four era of benchmark was truly something special.
Yeah,
the
so I mean,
2011
it's kind of like it kind of builds itself. The Mount Rushmore right now, right? It's going to be Sequoia, Kleiner, benchmark, and then we're going to have a big debate on the fourth, aren't we?
Yeah.
Like, is it?
Well, it just depends how wide we're willing to scope it. Is it like traditional Series A type venture firms, or
is it AngelList, Naval?
Right.
That's had a huge impact.
Do you put YC in there? Do you put
YC or Techstars? Both have a huge impact. Do you put, who else could be in there? That's just.
You could argue for Founders Fund.
You can say YC and Techstars.
Not yet, but Founders Fund
completely different thing.
Is on the way.
YC is like.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
3 orders of magnitude more significant.
They've done the same number of companies, I think, but just in terms of returns, yes. Yeah. But Techstars, I think, was a little before Y Combinator. But anyway, you definitely have Y Combinators, in the running for that fourth spot, I guess. And then who else would you put in there? Masa? Or Yuri Milner.
That's high beta.
Well, no, I mean, but in that
maybe
impact on the
Founders
industry.
Fund,
impact
maybe,
on the
Excel,
Founders Fund, yeah.
I don't know, depending on.
Excel would be in the running for sure. It's Ron Conway.
I think the way you kind of have to define it, which is unfortunate because it means that it's going to be a long ass time before your firm hits Mount Rushmore, is 3 successful generational transitions where each of the generations would have been on Mount Rushmore.
All right, so then let's just do this. Instead of Mount Rushmore, because we're talking firms. Yeah. So for firms, you do Mount Rushmore, right? So I think if you were just going to say the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Just the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And the Hall of Fame has, let's just say.
Oh, dude, we should open the Venture Capital Hall of Fame.
That thing would get the Investor Hall of Fame, Capital Allocator Hall of Fame, top 25.
I was trying to figure out when we were doing the benchmark episode research, which will be out by the time this comes out.
Yeah.
2480 Sand Hill Road is a very special building. It was the Forethought PowerPoint.
The Quadras
Complex.
Yeah.
Office. Then it was Microsoft Silicon Valley.
We're the only 3 people who give a shit about this.
Oh, no.
3 of us are so excited right now.
This is the internet.
It's like, wow.
There's so many people. All the other people.
Everybody else who cares about this is listening right now.
Yeah. It's like, and like Sebastian, who wrote the parallels. Like,
yeah.
You guys are taking this way too seriously. It's not that important.
But then
we're like alone yelling in David's house about a fictional Hall of Fame.
TVI, Merrill Pickard.
TVI. That's a good.
August Capital,
1 on 20
Benchmark
at
Capital, Shasta Capital, all in this same building. And I think there's some space for rent in there. I don't want to go live down there, but I think we got to take out a lease just to put the museum,
Venture
the Hall
Capital,
of Fame.
Venture Capital Hall of Fame is something we should collaborate on. We should just do it.
That would be pretty fun.
Fuck it. We'll just do it like
we'll
do it like every year. We induct somebody. We'll get up there, the 3 of us, and be like, this year we're inducting into the Venture Capital Hall of Fame.
We should totally do this.
Can Ohio exist?
Hilarious.
Cooperstown.
No, there is a what do you call it? It'd be our Cooperstown.
Yeah,
there
there
is
used to be
the
a
Computer
Cooperstown.
History Museum, but
It's
that's
not
for the
a-
PC, which is totally valid.
Right,
but
right,
it's
yeah,
not
yeah.
for capital allocators.
It's not for people.
So
there should be a
no.
Hall of Fame.
And do we Midas list style ask people for the real hard truth numbers?
No. It's about impact. You have to
We
think,
decide. The three of us, we decide.
It has to be impact on the game.
Does the NVCA have like a lifetime achievement award? Is that
Whatever,
the closest
who
thing?
It
cares?
doesn't really exist anymore.
Yeah, no, it's about impact, legacy, like the intent of the person. Like
Right.
this is why like Paul Graham would be like, first ballot. This is why.
Yeah.
Okay,
who
Doug
are the
Leone
first ballot
It's
entrants?
so obvious.
We've already talked about it.
We already
okay,
talked about
okay,
those
okay.
are all first ballot.
Do we have anybody who we haven't talked about or who's non-obvious but would be a first ballot?
You
Peter
can't.
Thiel.
This is what I'd say. If you're under 20 years, you're not let's wait till you're 25 years in.
Yeah, just
If you're
like the Sports Hall of Fames, you got to have a...
Yeah, you got to be. You're not playing in the league anymore. So
Yeah.
Paul Graham's still playing in the league.
Does
right?
Jeff Bezos count? Like,
Well, I mean, how many investments has he made? That Google investment is crazy.
so there's that, but there's also like I think Amazon is the best venture firm of all time. And just in terms of like
Explain.
it's internal. Like, they're not separate
no,
companies,
no.
but like
so yes, capital allocating, lowercase c, lowercase a. They've been great at placing bets.
Yeah.
But you're right.
Well, we
Jeff
have
Bezos
to-
is probably the most successful angel of all time.
Yeah, I mean, if you just did it on
And
dollar,
LP.
Yeah,
you
and
gotta do it
LP.
on, when you're looking at it, I think you gotta look at impact. Like
Yeah.
impact on
I
the
like that.
game, legacy.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
so is
yeah.
Carmelo Anthony Hall of Fame? Of course he is, but he didn't win a ring. But
Yeah.
he's Carmelo Anthony, right? Like or Charles Barkley didn't win a ring, but
Okay, so then we got like Arthur Rock. Like
Yeah.
you got to look at like the founding father type.
Of course, yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, that's like going back to Bob Cousy or whatever. They're going back to like some really like,
Yeah.
people who built the league kind of situation before it
Yep.
became the league, right?
Yep.
So you got
Yep.
the league and you got the people before the league, you got people
Yeah.
in the league. You
Yeah.
got generational shit right here. Patrick Ewing.
Yep.
Gotta
Because I
put
think
Bob-
like you look at Gurley, like he's part of that Patrick Ewing generation, right?
Yeah,
Like that
yeah.
Hakeem Olajuwon, Charles
Yeah,
Barkley
yeah,
generation.
yeah.
You start talking about Founders Fund or YC or AngelList, like okay, now you're talking about more modern era.
Yep.
Still going modern era after 2000. But if you started before 2000, it's a different group.
Do you notice we haven't talked about Andreessen Horowitz in this conversation?
God, who cares?
No, impact on the game,
I'm
they're
just
in.
observing
They're in.
that.
I
Both of them
mean,
are in, for sure.
yeah,
No doubt.
No,
First
they,
ballot.
they totally are.
I guess.
Impact on the game?
They totally changed the
I
game.
mean, I just feel like it's gratuitous. It's just like raising $10 billion, 3 funds a year. I want to see what happens with the crypto stuff. I think they're just an index of venture. I find it quite soulless, if I'm being honest. Like, I feel like it's a giant index on venture, and I don't think that their hearts are super into it.
Well, I do think they have interesting ambitions, though. I think this, like...
That's the problem.
The
It's more
JP Morgan,
ambition.
yeah.
It's more ambition than soulful.
But there should be a JP Morgan or a Goldman Sachs of Silicon Valley.
and
Should
they
there
are
be?
that, for sure.
I don't know.
Yeah. Why does Goldman Sachs manage the money of
I
entrepreneurs?
just feel it's too okay, fine, but I just feel like it's too it's like too premeditated and less soulful. I feel like it's a soulful business where like your intentionality and your relationship with the founders really
It's
matters.
not the craft. It's I mean, it's like the literal antithesis of
It's
benchmark.
industrialization.
It's the it's the industrialization of it. It's the factorization of it. And listen, I'm sure it'll be very successful. At the end of the day, all the returns will be great except for the crypto stuff.
Well,
It'll be a
I mean,
disaster.
there'll be mean reversion because,
But-
like, when you get the law of large numbers, you have mean reversion.
Exactly. It will be mean reversion for sure. I mean, that was at some point they leaked a lot of their returns and they were like,
Not fair. That was the 2015.
well, they
thing,
did actually. It was
and-
early. So yeah, that was
Yeah.
stupid that the journalists didn't understand it. But there were some older ones. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
it was like during that time, like you start comparing it to Sequoia or Benchmark. I don't think it's gonna. I think in the arc, it will not be comparable to Benchmark and Sequoia.
And we, I mean, made a lot of hay of the fact that they had that they made $11 billion in profit on Coinbase, and like,
Right, which is...
I do not think they sold out of that.
No, they
So
didn't.
they did not make $11 billion
Yeah,
in
fair
profit
enough.
as of
Fair
today.
enough.
Well, I mean, it's timing is everything. We'll see. I mean,
It's
crypto-
interesting, too. I mean, having just done this Benchmark episode, like the Benchmark Fund 7, one of, if not the best institutional size fund of all time. Just like unreal.
20
but
to 25x
even that, like
on
the
550
fluctuation in the marks on that fund, and it'll probably end up between 15 and 25x. Maybe, but it fluctuates up and down so much.
Yeah, of course.
Like,
I mean, we live in a very volatile time right
Yeah.
now. So, yeah, I like the Hall ofAme idea. It's kind of interesting.
I think
but-
that actually would be a fun thing to
we
work
should
on
get some
together.
space on Sand Hill and put up.
No, we could just do it as like a dinner. We just literally have
We don't need
every
a
year
space.
we
Yeah.
get we could just start in a restaurant, but you could get like a little hall.
Yeah.
And say we're going to induct into the Venture Capital Hall of Fame the following people, and here they are, and we just have 3 pictures. boom, 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 and you just drop it, and it's like, here's our 3 people, and then people come up and say something about the person.
And I think like we could do like the 3 who we would hope would be there, and then we'll have
we
like
do it like
1 or
the
2
sports where you
posthumous.
have the person who's being inducted chooses who inducts them.
Sure.
Which
Oh, that's fun.
So Ruloff does Doug,
Yeah.
or whoever does Moritz.
Yeah. But
Sean Parker does Moritz.
Mike chooses who,
Yeah, no, he can have Larry and Sergey
he
come
has Jason
up.
Calacanis come up and
he
be
can have
like,
Larry and Sergey come up, obviously.
totally.
Yeah.
John Doerr would ask Bezos. I mean, it's killer. It's a killer idea. I mean, we just do Bezos, Doug, and Mike.
Yep.
And then
Who inducts?
you do one in
Bill?
memoriam.
Yes, for
You
sure.
would do one in memoriam.
Yes, exactly.
So you do, whatever.
Yes,
Valentine.
Because it would be
Perkins.
anticlimactic if the only because we will induct Don first, and if the only person that we inducted that year wasn't a living person who could attend. Like,
You do a combo. You do a
Yeah.
combo. Maybe it's
Yeah.
4 people a year. You know,
Yeah.
you have to think. How do you want to get to 25? So maybe you want to get to 25 to 50 over 10, 20 years. So maybe it's 3 a year.
In order for this to like feel good, I think you're right that it has to be about impact, not about returns.
No, returns is like so. That would be like saying it's like albums sold for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Right.
There are people.
That'd be a very Andreessen Horowitz way to do it. Is what
That
you're
would,
saying.
Andrew's like, oh, what's the total assets under management? And it's like, okay, dude, we get it. Yeah,
Nickelback sold a lot of albums.
yeah, they're the Nickelback of venture.
No, I didn't mean that.
You said that. You said it.
I wasn't talking about
Mark, if you're listening,
Andreessen.
man,
Oh
it's
god.
Nickelback.
Oh god. Oh god.
Like the Milli
now they
Vanilli
never
sold
come on the
tons of
show.
albums.
Right.
So I'm not saying that they're the Milli Vanilli. No, but there is like,
Oh boy.
there's, if you were to look at Ron Conway, did Ron Conway, who had a bigger impact, Ron Conway or Andreessen? Like, I think it's a conversation. And because Ron Conway, when I came into the industry, like there was at one point I was at the Crunchies, and Ron Conway, at one point, like somebody said, like, hey, can everybody stand up who said Ron Conway invest in their company? And 100 people stood up,
100%.
and my mind was like, oh, whoa, angel investing's cool. I mean, I wasn't an angel investor at the time. I was, long before I became a scout. But that I always remember that moment when like 100 people
that
stood
like
up.
inspired, partially inspired.
Did the scout
was
program, is that
inception.
what
It was
gave you
inception,
yeah.
is that what like put you in business as an angel
The
investor?
scout is what put me in business.
Yeah.
What happened was I had...
Was your Uber investment you personally, or was that
No, the scout.
Sequoia's money?
That was Sequoia's money. Okay. Yeah. And we were like, Ruloff and I were trying to figure out, like, do we let people know we're doing this or not? It was like a big controversy at the time.
Right.
Like, we want to keep this stealthy, but I
Right.
mean, Travis knew, but it was a pretty great deal. It was like,
Wow.
at the
Split
time
the carry 50-50.
50-50 at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. They dropped it down after that. Doug Leone was,
I bet.
was like, every time I'd see Doug Leone, he's like 50%.
And they had
carry.
30% carry
believe it.
at Sequoia at that point, I think.
Yes,
Whereas I mean, if I were you, I'd be like 50% carry to them. I can't believe it.
No. Doug always, they're so classy. Doug always made a joke. Would always make a joke. It was like 50% carry. Oh God, we get 30, you get 50. It was just funny.
We get 30.
We get. I love it.
Pretty
I love
funny.
it.
Pretty
Turn
funny.
that.
Listen, we're very lucky. I think if you look at what we do as capital allocators, I think it's a very special part of it's a very special function in the world. I take it very seriously, as you do for the retirees you're investing on behalf of, but also just think about humanity. And I don't mean to make it heady, but these companies do move the human species forward as...
Look at Elon.
Yeah, exactly. So the human species getting moved forward by, as Steve Jobs would say in those commercials, like, this is the crazy ones. They do need fuel. They, maybe don't have an idea of... if they should even build this company. And I think the capital allocators really come in and say, here's some fuel, here, go fight that war,
It's fuel and it's belief too. I mean, like what
Absolutely.
your story about Com
Yeah.
is not uncommon, I think, amongst
Oh my God.
founders.
I mean, the stories about Don Valentine and Atari and other places where he was at Cisco. It's like, listen, we got to get this thing back on the rails. This thing's going to zero.
Yeah.
There's a lot of existential moments where things go to zero and like...
So can I ask you, as we start to like
Wind down.
drift toward the end of the episode here,
That's your line. That's your favorite line.
Drift.
That's the Ben signature line.
coalesce here toward the end of the
Drift towards the end of the episode.
Is this
As
a
our
good
time
format?
together.
Like, is this different enough from our normal show? Should we do this?
I think
what should we
so.
change?
Yeah, do you like this?
I think a casual glass of wine and just, if you have friends of the pod and you want to go deep and talk about them in a more casual way, sure. Yeah. I mean, I think it's a great way to just have somebody on again.
Yeah.
So if you profile somebody, like, I forgot that I had you had done like the first episode with me, and that was more about my career and more details, and so I'm starting to tell stories over again. It's like, well, let's talk about some other stuff, right?
Yeah, but
So I think
That's
it's
all right.
like
But,
It's a different context.
Our audience was 1/10 the size.
I like this
at that
format.
point.
well, part of what we, like Lex has done so great with his show.
yeah,
But those type of conversations. But I feel like that's more. What's the right word? Our shows are about the business of tech.
yeah, no, his is intellectual
not
dark
about
web.
that,
I don't know why
yeah.
he's in the tech vertical,
But I like the format,
He's-
and like Kevin Rose used to do the Foundation series, and like
yeah, I mean, long form interviews like Howard. I mean, I think Joe Rogan stole it from Howard,
Yeah.
and I think it's now Lex stole it from Joe, or
Yep.
I want to even say stole. I think, inspired by.
Yeah.
So Lex is clearly inspired by Joe, and Joe was in the running to replace Jackie Martling on the Howard Stern show. People don't know this. So
Really?
he was very enamored with Stern. And he wanted to be Stern, I think, and he eventually has supplanted Stern in a way.
he did become Stern.
Yeah, he did become Stern, and so good on him. Yeah.
Right down to the Sirius, Spotify, like right down to it. He became Stern.
doing a platform.
Yeah,
deal,
doing a platform,
which
deal.
is what Stern did. Stern
Yeah.
had multiple platform deals. He did syndication first, then he did the Sirius XM one because it was a new platform, and he built the He used his number one show to build their platform, right? Which is, I think, what
But actually, to bring it all the way full circle back to Charlie Rose, like
Yeah.
that he was like a business. I mean, he did more than business, but like he would
He did
have
culture, business, anybody in New York, because everybody in New York was pretty fucking interesting. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
He could have somebody from Wall Street, a publisher, an author,
Yeah.
somebody who does films. He would have like Spike Lee on it. He'd have Woody Allen on. He would have, any actress on who was doing something interesting. Any novelist, Margaret Atwood, anybody, which is coming through New York on a press tour. You would do your press tour, and then you would just go chill with Charlie, and you would get to do something long form.
Yeah.
It was like a little like sort of more jazzy, a little bit more like acoustic. So I like this format for you guys.
Do you listen to Smartless at all? Do you know about that show?
I have listened to one or two episodes. It's Bateman, Will
Arnett,
and then somebody else.
Yeah, the guy from Will and Grace, Sean.
I don't know who that person is, but they bring on a surprise guest each time.
And
the other people don't know.
Yes.
So they're not prepared.
Yes, and it's like Katy Perry, it's like Chris Pratt.
Yeah, it's become a big deal.
I kind of want to do that of tech, but like,
wait, you and I don't know who one of us is bringing somebody.
You guys are not good. You can't make. You got to know the person's background much better.
But they
because
all
the celebrities
seem to
carry
know
a certain charisma with them that our industry doesn't have.
Yeah.
But maybe it doesn't have to be
Unless
the
you're
surprise as much as like.
True.
Well, the other thing is that even though they have guests, the show is actually about them. The guest is a prop.
In a way, yeah, I guess. I've only listened to one or two. I see it in the rankings, like it does incredibly well. Like it's a top 10 or top 25 podcast. Is it part of a network? Is it part of Spotify or something? I don't think so, because I see it on iTunes very high.
I don't think so.
It's really weird that Spotify doesn't allow Joe Rogan and Call Her Daddy on iTunes because the advertising would be huge.
Right.
So why not bake the ads in and put them over there?
There's some MBA that's run the numbers that says it's more valuable if it's driving new subscribers to Spotify.
I guess that's it. Yeah. Oh, I guess you know what? They want to be able to have those new subscribers so when they go renegotiate with the music. I saw they're doing audiobooks too now. That's the next piece.
Yeah, that is the next piece.
Yeah, they're doing audiobooks, one-off purchases. Smart. I mean, audio is great.
All right, it's getting really hot in here.
It's getting
we got it.
For those of you who don't know, we're in like
a sauna.
A new, it's David's new house.
David just moved.
David's got a new empty house.
There's no air conditioning here.
It's sort of like The Shining.
There's no furniture. We just furnished this room.
This is all from Craigslist. All of it, literally, in the last 2 days.
That explains the smell.
All right.
You could have. I mean, listen, you're rich, dude. Just go on and buy some Crate and Barrel.
We can't all be Jason Calacanis.
No, come on, man. I know those fees.
Oh
my God.
I love Craigslist. I love Craigslist. I love it.
You buy used furniture on Craigslist
all the time. I do not buy any furniture.
All right, that's gotta stop.
I bought a temporary couch on Craigslist.
It's the thrill of the market.
No. You're gonna get robbed. Don't do it. It's too crazy. Craig Newmark, I love you, but no.
All right. With that, our thank you to Vanta.
Oh, vanta.com/acquired. Vanta.com/acquired.
Our thank you also, you don't know who the other sponsors are because we didn't record them live with you because we felt very strongly that it was, we wanted to make better use of your time.
I love reading the ads. Are you kidding me?
Do you want to read our Brex ad?
They don't sponsor my pod, so no. Brex, maybe they have. I don't know.
There's also a lot of ad-libbing in it.
You're talking about Brex card.
Brex, yeah.
Brex, yeah.
I know a lot of
spend
people who
management.
use Brex. I think we use Brex.
It is
one of my companies.
If you're enterprise, if you're global, by far the best corporate spend management.
It's much more than a card now.
Much more than a
for
card.
expenses and everything like that, right? And then they've kind of expanded behind that. So you can give cards to each of your employees, and then if they screw up, you can turn it off or something. Right?
Yes, exactly.
If they jump the
Pre-approve
fence.
some budgets.
Yeah, you don't want people jumping the fence and going crazy.
All the listeners know because they heard it like an hour ago. They're very familiar with
Because
that.
it's in here,
Yeah.
So anyway, thanks. Shout out Brex.
So that's Brex.
Shout out Brex.
And then
Use the promo code TWIST.
we share
promo code.
we share this last sponsor.
These are great folks.
These are our like dear friends and geniuses and raconteurs.
Masterworks?
No. Good guess, though.
Think smaller but bigger.
Literally small,
You guys are killing
But
me.
secretly huge.
tiny.
Oh, Tiny, of course. Yes, they're buying companies.
They're buying companies.
They're doing a good job. Yes, they're creating like the Berkshire of
The
there
internet.
you go.
the internet.
And can you imagine a better time to get the monkey off
yum,
your
yum.
back of venture capital and
Sell your company.
Secure
the bag.
Listen to the VC telling you.
That's my
Let's go.
favorite JCal line. Secure the bag.
Let's go, man. Trust me, if you haven't secured the bag yet, it's a wonderful experience, man. There's nothing like getting home with the bag. You get that tiny bag.
You get that AOL
They
weblogs
call it,
exit.
oh man, let me tell you something. I'll tell you the story.
What did you do when you secured the bag?
I'll tell you what happened. It's a funny story. I'm in my office and I got Bank of America and I got like low thousands of dollars in my Bank of America account. I got an American Express card with -10 on it and a Visa with -5 or 10 on it. And I'm sitting there and they're like, oh, wires are good. You know, the BD people are AOL. And so I'm like hitting refresh.
Yeah.
On the thing.
This is
refresh,
2006, 7?
5 or 6,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm hitting refresh. And then bing, 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 bing. You know, all the numbers come in for the whole, amount.
And you own most of Weblogs, right?
Brian and I were equal partners.
Okay.
Then we had Peter Rojas had some ownership,
Right.
and then Mark Cuban was our big investor. And by big investor, he put $300K in for 5%. So that was a great outcome for him.
Wow.
Yeah. Or more. Maybe he won 10%. I think he won 10%. Anyway, long story short, my wife comes in. She said, you okay? And I said, what? She said, are you crying? And I reached up and I had a tear in my eye.
You're like, this is a new experience. I've never had this before.
And she said, she said, why are you crying? And I said, my family will never have to worry about money again. Because I spent my whole life worrying about money.
Yeah.
My dad had lost the business and everything. It was a very cathartic thing for me. And I think people, who are already rich, or maybe who come from means, just they don't understand the concept of living with the fear of being broke and in debt all the time. And then when you have the bag, you secure that tiny bag. And it's a tiny bag, but it's filled with diamonds and cash. And you just open it up and say, thank you, Tiny. Thank you, Tiny, for securing the bag.
Acquired.fm/tiny.
No, it's
Tiny.
literally, they don't give us a thing.
Oh,
I don't think.
we don't.
No,
that's
they just want you to know Tiny will help you secure the bag.
Is it hi at Tiny?
And tell them Ben
Whatever
and
it
David
is,
sent you.
like, just
Whatever.
know that Tiny will
Tell them
help
that
you
Ben, David,
secure
and
the
Jason
bag.
sent
And Jason.
Secure
You
the
can
bag,
mention
people.
Jason, yeah.
But I did buy
Okay.
a one-touch espresso machine. I bought a Jura one-touch espresso machine, which at the time was like $2,000, and I was like, "This is unbelievable."
That's the.
Then I
Yeah.
tried to buy a Ferrari.
Oh.
They wouldn't sell it to me in Beverly Hills.
You were the
What, like
riffraff?
no new money or something? What's the...
Yeah, basically, I went in there and they're like, "Oh yeah, what do you?" I'm like, "I'd like to buy a Ferrari today, the 430," and they're like, "Oh, we don't have any available." And I was like, "Okay, can I put myself on the wait list?" Like, we're not taking names from the wait list. So I said to this guy, "Can I ask, what do you do here?" He's like, "We sell Ferraris." I'm like, "To who?" This
This is part of their strategy.
It's part of the strategy.
It's part of the strategy.
And I
Was
was
they
like-
have the Ferraris, but they don't sell the Ferraris to build
like
these.
the-
we're not putting anybody on your list. So I was like, "Well, how long is the wait list?" He's like, he's like,
Don't even bother getting on it.
I was like, "Okay." I was like, "I'm a cash buyer." He's like, "Everybody's a cash buyer." I'm like, "Okay. Can I ask you a question then?" And he's like, "Sure. Come into my office with like espresso. You want some Pellegrino?" I was like, "No, I'm good." And
You want some Pellegrino.
like literally offered me Pellegrino espresso, and I was like, I have the same one touch, sure. And like this like Italian guy's like, I was like, I don't mean to be rude, but what do you do here all day? He's like, well, we deliver the cars and we service them and we sell used cars, pre-owned, certified.
For more.
And I was like, oh, well, I would take a pre-owned one. He's like, oh, well, the one you're looking at is pre-owned. I was like, no, the one I'm looking at, the 430, the red one out there, that's the one I want. that's got a sticker in the window. He's like, yeah, no, we certify them. We put the sticker on the window. I was like, oh, well, that goes for $230,000 or whatever. And so, what do you want for it? He's like, $300. And I was like,
you're like, the sticker says.
I was like, no.
This is the
used one. I was like, this is the used one I was looking at. He's like, yeah, you can't get these cars. And I was like, so you pay over $70,000. He's like, but it only has 2,000 miles on it. And I was like, 2,000 miles, it's 70,000 more than new. I said, why wouldn't I buy a new? He's like, because you can't get them. And I'm such an idiot from Brooklyn who doesn't understand the concept that people would pay over for the car, and I'm just perplexed.
Oh, that would bother me too.
I was like, all right, well, let me think about it. And I left, and then I was with my friend, and I was like, and I had the Rob report, and it said, like, number one car was the Ferrari F30, and that turned the page, it was Corvette. C6 was the number two car. And the starting line was, make Ferrari, buy two for half the price of a Ferrari, and beat them off the line. Or something like that. And I was like, let's go to the Chevy store.
Let's go to the Chevy store.
I walk in, there's Corvettes everywhere. The guy looks at me and he goes, you want to buy a Corvette? I said, yeah. He said, if you buy a Corvette today, I'll give you $5,000 off. I was like, yeah. So we go out on the 405 and we're driving the Corvette, and he's like, this is a Corvette, son. Like, you're going 70 miles an hour. I'm not selling. I said, I'm not. He says, I'm not selling this car to you unless you hit that gas much harder. And I said, okay. And I punch it to 100 miles per hour. The guy's like, yeah, how does that feel? I'm like, great. We go back.
That guy's good at his
job.
job.
I come home with the Corvette. I come home with the yellow convertible Corvette. My wife's like, what happened to the Ferrari? I was like, this thing only costs $65,000. It's like 70, and I got $5,000 off.
And it's American, baby.
And it's American. And that was the car that I famously was, according to Gawker, Robert Scoble, myself, and Elon, when Elon got the first P1 of the Roadster, he was like, I got it. I was like, oh, let's meet in Brentwood. And we were driving them at
You were racing.
We were driving them along Sunset Boulevard. A spirited drive along Sunset Boulevard. And we did it like 5 times. And 5 out of 5 times, the Tesla just destroyed the Corvette. And I was like, I'm doing something wrong. And, then we switched cars. And I was like, nope, electric's just going to beat everything. And this was the first one that, that was
it's
P1,
amazing.
the prototype. That's in space right now. It's the cherry red one that's in space.
That's the one that's in space.
And there's a famous photo of me and Elon in front of the Corvette.
With the spaceman.
That one's it, but there's a famous photo of the two of us, in front of my Corvette and his P1. And I remember that night like it was yesterday, because this is before the iPhone, you realize. Like, Robert Scoble was recording this on his Nokia, smartphone.
These are the memories, right? Like,
Crazy.
This is the journey that you've been on.
Yeah, it's pretty
and this
crazy.
is the stuff you just will cherish forever.
My life is unbelievable. I am so grateful for it. And thanks for having me on the pod, guys.
Thanks, listeners, thank you so much. Acquired.fm/Slack. Come join us. We'd love your feedback.
Slack's cool.
This is a new shtick.
Yeah.
Acquired.fm/store. You can buy cool shirts.
Swag.
/jobs. Find your next great career experience.
Craigslist.
I just added a bunch of new ones. That's right. Acquired.fm/David buys you some smelly furniture. My God, it is hot in here.
All right, we got it.
Let's go eat some food. Let's have some sushi or Mexican. I don't know what we're going for here.
That was
awesome. Great, boys.
Oh, so fun. Thank you so much.
Of course.
All right, listeners, we hope you enjoyed that very first Acquired Sessions with Jason Calacanis. It's a new format we're playing with. We would love your thoughts. acquiredfm@gmail.com or tweet at us at acquiredfm. I am curious what you liked, what you didn't like. And on that note of feedback, we have something that we really, really want you to participate in. No pressure or anything, but it would mean the world to us if you did. We just launched the 2022 Acquired Survey, and we have had the wonderful problem of our audience growing a lot since the last time we did one of these, and we no longer feel like we have a great handle on who all of you are. And so we would be eternally grateful if you would spare the 3 minutes to participate. Tell us a little bit about yourself. One lucky winner will get 2nd generation AirPods Pro, which I have been wearing all over the place and are indeed twice as noise canceling, whatever that means, Apple, and has some, I think, better battery life too. And David, for you, they have very tiny little ear tips, right?
Yes, for my tiny, tiny ears. I'm so excited about the extra small tips. They finally fit in my ears.
It's awesome. 10 other winners will get Acquired t-shirts from our fancy new merch store. Again, 3 minutes to participate at acquired.fm/survey, or you can click the link in the show notes. And thank you so much for helping us. It really does help us run the show here at Acquired World HQ. All right. Well, with that, our huge thank you to our sponsors for this episode. We've got Vanta, Brex, and our friends over at Tiny. Links for each of those are in the show notes. And with that, listeners, we'll see you next time.
We'll see you next time.